Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Scion Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Font Knowledge Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Yagi Tashanori huffs, walking to that old beach that he and his master used to frequent. It's probably still a landfill. He dourly recalls the state it was in last time he visited. It's been a year since he was injured by All for One, and right now he really feels like being there would be something to soothe his pain. As he rounds a corner in his car, he blinks. The mountains of trash aren't in sight. He quickly leaves his vehicle and goes to the edge of the sea wall. Down at the beach, there's a small-looking green-haired kid. He touches a hand to a broken-down 18-wheeler truck chassis and lightning flashes off the kid and strikes it, somehow turning the 18-wheeler chassis into blocks of various materials. The kid seems to hum happily as he bends down and starts picking up the blocks and placing them in a leather messenger bag he has hanging off his hip. The amount definitely doesn't seem like it should fit in that size of a bag. This beach had a nice haul. Anyway, are you going to keep staring? He turns and gives Tashanori a flat look. Said blonde-haired man rubs the back of his head in embarrassment as he takes the stairs down. The green-haired kid just keeps giving him a slightly disinterested look until his eyes seem to widen. What the hell happened to you? He asks, suddenly surging forwards. Tashanori raises an eyebrow. Kinda rude to ask that, don't ya think? He questions, despite how weird it feels that the kid is staring right where his wound is. The kid rolls their eyes. I can tell it's an injury. Even if you're able to hide the pain, you can't hide the wound. Not from me. Izuku Midoria. Licensed healer, recycler, and all-around mess of a person. The kid introduces. Oh, and him. The boy shrugs and hands Tashanori an actual license for Quirk healing. I constantly have a detect wounds ability active when I see new people. Mostly because a lot of people like to hide their pain and I think it's stupid. Anyway, lift up your shirt. How old are you, kid? Tashanori asks. Midoria huffs. 15. I wanted to graduate early since I'm already ahead of most university graduates in terms of actual knowledge, but my mom would be disappointed if I decided to race ahead of those in my actual age range. Apparently she made that mistake before. Still, she lets me get licenses as long as I don't need an actual degree for it. So that's why I have that. Anyway, show me the wound or I'll just recycle your shirt. Tashanori stares at the actual child standing in front of him, and he sighs. Fine. He's dealt with eccentrics like this before. Best to just get it over with. He lifts up his shirt, expecting a hiss or a grossed-out noise, but instead the kid just hums. Okay, I'll need an actual operating to heal that kinda thing without risk. The kid mutters, utterly terrifying Tashanori because, what this kid can actually heal this kinda damage? Too much missing tissue and change to body. Animal sacrifice needed? No, he can probably still regain the muscle, and that kind of injury definitely hit the more risk-prone organs. A flash of recognition. Oh, you're All Might, aren't you? Tashanori jolts and stares at the kid, letting his shirt drop. I don't know who you're talking about. Tashanori blinks a little. Damn it, played too dumb. Midoria snorts, giving him an unimpressed smirk that seems familiar. How I know is that I was supposed to help heal you after you got that injury. I had gotten my license a month after you got injured. The doctors that I studied under know my Quirk works on wounds like this, so they sent me imaging in advance for the procedure, along with knowledge that you're a pro hero. I narrowed it down to being you that got injured as you took a bit to come back around the same time as the original injury took place, and you've been slowly but surely pulling away from heroics as a result. Plus you show signs of severe muscle loss. He tacks on at the end. What the F-. Tashanori thinks, just staring wide-eyed as Midoria continues to mutter the ways he could treat the wound. After a while, Midoria hums. Anyway, if you have a personal doctor you trust to vet me, go ahead and give them my card. Midoria presses a few business cards into Tashanori's hand. I have a few other stops for today, so this is where I leave you. Enjoy the view and all that. Midoria gives a slight bow, then disappears in a strange burst of green light that makes the same sound as wind rushing past Tashanori's ears. Tashanori blinks, and as he looks out into the ocean, he is struck by how beautiful this spot is, and the fact that there's no longer even a scrap of trash left hanging around. I'm going to have to contact Nedu about this, aren't I? He shivers from even thinking about the chimera. Izuku stretches a little as he lands at home, smiling as he walks inside. I'm home. He shouts into the house, already knowing his mom's here from her mana signature. Welcome back. She shouts back from the living room. She walks into view soon after Izuku manages to get his house slippers on. How was the haul? There was a ridiculous amount of stuff from this one. They somehow got a whole 5-truck chassis down there. When I was finishing up, this really injured old dude showed up. He's so injured I'm going to need a proper operating room to heal him without risk. Mom nods, already a little used to Izuku being a healer along with the recycling he does. You still plan on hanging out with at the Bakugos? She asks as Izuku goes to a seemingly random chest located next to their home's TV. Well, the chest is random if you ignore the glowing purple gem socketed into the front of it and the fact that you can't see the bottom when you look into it. Also the fact that its lid won't budge unless you are one of the Midoriyas or someone they trust. Izuku grabs the gold, silver, and other valuable materials he'd gotten from the beach and tosses them inside. He leaves the other materials inside his messenger. Yeah, just came here to empty my bag. The guy needs time to get back to me about his injury and he doesn't seem like he'll keel over anytime soon. He then walks off to his little workshop where the garage would normally be. His mom doesn't like driving, and Izuku can fly, so they just use it for their hobbies. Himself with his eclectic set of skills, and her for sewing and knitting supplies. You still have a couple of commissions that need work. Mom says, looking at a couple of the mannequins that have cosplay clothes on them. Izuku shrugs. Yeah. I'll handle it tomorrow. Or after whatever Katsuki wants to have me over for. Izuku opens up a drawer on his metalworking bench and moves all of the metal he got from the beach inside by using telekinesis. A constant stream of metal cubes extends from his bag and into the drawer for 30 seconds. We're getting low on space in that drawer, he sighs. Guess I really do need to sort the metals into separate spaces. He goes around the garage and starts depositing the other materials in other spots. Once he fills a crate with a bunch of Danger logos on it, Izuku nods to himself. Right, next I need to take this to the Danger crew, then I'll go to Katsuki's place. His mom nods. Alright, make sure to give Jade some pets though. She's been getting restless with you out of the house so often. Izuku sighs. Poor girl got too many of my traits. Jade? He asks to the open air, sending out a telepathic signal. Soon enough, a dark green wolf skitters into the garage, sitting at Izuku's feet. Yes, Izuku? The voice in his head sounds cool, calm, and confident. Completely unlike the heavily breathing dog Izuku sees in front of him. The green-haired boy walks forwards and hugs the dog around the neck, eliciting an excited feeling from Jade. Just wanted to say I love you and I'm sorry for being out so often. How about you join me for the next few days? The wolf whines a little. But what about Mom? Izuku grimaces. It's true, he does want someone else to guard the house while he's out, but Mom did get her own version of Jade recently. She's got Sylvia. In response, a griffin appears next to Mom, making a light scree noise at Jade. Protective fire igniting in her eyes. Jade chuffs a little and nods at Sylvia. Okay, I'll leave it to you. Izuku extends a hand, which Jade places her paw in. Shortly after, the wolf flashes and turns into a mote of green light, which rushes at Izuku, and with that, Jade returns to her rightful place close to Izuku's mana pool. Izuku then taps a crystal on the side of the hazard crate and it shrinks down to a size he can put into his bag. Right, I'm off. Izuku says, smiling to his mom, who just waves. Izuku activates another teleport spell and appears on their roof. He takes a deep inhale of the air before activating a flight spell and starting towards the government workers that buy the recycled dangerous materials. Izuku finishes up with the government workers and starts towards Katsuki's house when his healer net notification pings. He sighs and uses technopathy to send Katsuki a quick text explaining that he'll probably be a bit late before starting a supersonic flight in the direction of the incident. He pulls out his staff and lands at the recovery station. Situation? He asks a white-haired man. The man does a double take, before recognizing him. Oh, Verdante, several are hanging on by threads, if you could. Before the man can finish, Izuku slams his staff into the ground and lets his mana flow out. Stabilizing dome, he intones. Strawberry red mana flows out from his staff and forms a dome around 30 meters in radius. Red motes of light fall onto the severely hurt and slowly bring everything into a calm. Is this everyone from this incident? He asks. The white-haired man nods, and Izuku sighs. Chain light healing. He points at one patient and lightning made of healing mana strikes them, before arcing around the room and healing all of the wounded. Izuku sighs as he hears manic laughter. He gives the fellow healer a pained look as he turns around to see the A-rank villain, Muscular, slowly trying to approach the recovery station. Somebody didn't teach him the proper lessons at villain school. Izuku snarks. The man says something about killing everyone in the station. The other healer snorts and taps Izuku on the shoulder. I'll let you handle this one. He says. Izuku rolls his shoulders. The next one's on you then. He exits the red bubble, leaving his staff behind to help the wounded recover faster. Right, so, newscasters. You get that on record? Izuku shouts, and a cameraman nods, giving a thumbs up. Good. Now then. Izuku cracks his neck a little. Healer's right to protect patients. Izuku wraps himself in emerald lightning and surges forwards, punching Muscular in the face and knocking him out instantly. Shackles of Susanoo. Izuku intones after sliding to a stop. He snaps his fingers, red lightning arcs up from the ground and wraps around Muscular, healing the head wound Izuku left while also ensuring he won't be able to move until authorities could get here and arrest him. This defeat is a mercy for you, Izuku says, glaring down into the villain's now awake eyes. There are healers who are far more sadistic than I ever could be. Don't F with the recovery stations. Izuku waits for a bit so the authorities can pick up the villain, then he walks back to the bubble he made. He briefly activates Wound Vision and looks around at the victims. Okay, all that's left are a few scrapes and the PTSD. I've got an appointment to get to, so I'll leave the rest to you guys. Zombie, the white-haired healer who greeted Izuku when he first got here, nods. Go ahead and take off, kid. Izuku grabs his staff and puts it back in his bag before flying off. Katsuki was bound to ask about this incident, so on the way, Izuku writes down an interesting way to recount the incident. Tashanori looks over the info that Nedu had sent back. Izuku Midoria. Active licenses, Flyer, Healer, Quirk Recycling. Healer nickname, Verdante. Quirk, Font of Knowledge. Grants the user the ability to create tomes and writing utensils. Information written in the blank tomes are memorized by the user, and nobody but the user can interact with the tomes summoned by the Quirk. Has a side effect of making the user able to read and write in all forms of written text without needing to be taught. User can also print copies of a tome into a book others can interact with. Fundamentally correct knowledge contained in the tomes contributes to an energy well within the user called mana, which allows the user to perform supernatural feats akin to magic from fantasy books and games. A particular tome called Teacher helps the user learn the ways to use this function. That second paragraph of his quirk is classified to level, meaning only very few quirk counselors are ever allowed to know about it. And people like Nedu and All Might, who are viewed as trustworthy enough to know that information. Ah, that explains things. The kid can use magic. Freely. Tashanori murmurs as he continues to read the incidents the kid had been a part of, the one involving the villain Demon King Durzo being the one noted to be the one that Midoria got the nickname Verdante after his coloring, and a video game character from Devil May Cry. If he's being honest, All Might feels a bit bad for that villain. Just a bit. It was obvious nobody taught him the important lesson of never mess with the recovery zone. Even heroes have been thrown out on there but for causing a disturbance in that kind of area. Villains are shown no quarter. From what Tashanori can tell, Midoria is the most merciful frontline healer he's ever encountered. To be a hero, you first need to have a very healthy fear of the healers, otherwise you're too dumb to even fight off villains. As Gran Torino said, giving a lecture on what exactly an emergency recovery zone is and thus who the civilians but not who will be let past police lines are. A small voice speaks into his mind as he finishes the incidents list. Complete the cycle, 8th. It feels ancient, not nearly as energetic as any of the voices Tashanori has heard before. That was almost definitely first. He's always gotten little whispers on occasion, from the vestiges. He feels what they want him to do much easier than actually hearing them speak, but sometimes they like to tell him things to go along with the feeling. They want him to pass one for all on to Midoria. Okay, but I'm getting healed before I do that. And I'm going to have to announce a recuperation PRD so I can train up enough to not look like a hollow from Dark Souls. He feels the vestiges agree to that idea, and he stands up from his computer, going to his phone. The boy definitely seems worthy of the power and trustworthy enough to heal Tashanori's wounds. Still, there has to be a story behind the boy, and Tashanori is certainly curious about it. For days after meeting All Might, Izuku is brought to UA to heal the man. Apparently the university is the only place All Might trusts to keep his healing and recovery under wraps. So, you wanted to know my story? Izuku asks. All Might is awake during the operation because Izuku needs to reinvigorate his brain because he wasn't getting nearly enough oxygen surviving on just one lung, not to mention all the nutrients he's missed from lacking a stomach. Honestly, Izuku's various senses are telling him All Might is somehow holding together with chewing gum and a wish. It'd be horrifying if Izuku didn't know he could heal the man. All Might nods. Yes. I want to know why you're like this. He gestures at Izuku. Said green-haired boy smacks the hand a little. Don't move, please. I will restrain you if I need to. Izuku says, giving a stiff glare before sighing and continuing with the previous subject. It's nothing all that amazing, tragic, or heroic. I just do what I feel is right, and it turns out my moral compass is fairly strong. Most of the things you might want to find out about were just me pursuing training my quirk and ways to help people. He sets up a potion to go into an 4-tube to slowly help the man get enough nutrients that Izuku can safely heal him to full. He'd confirmed that the man doesn't have any allergies other than a mild shellfish allergy, so he doesn't have to worry about the potion causing a negative reaction. I still think it might be an intriguing tale. All Might says. He also winces as Izuku stabs him with the needle of the 4. Luckily he gets it in the vein first try so Izuku doesn't have to feel weird about stabbing his favorite hero multiple times. Izuku's mouth purses a little. Well, we do have time while that 4 gets you healthy enough that I can heal you, so I guess I can give you the full story. Izuku relaxes in a nearby chair. In a hospital, Qingqing City, China, a glowing baby was Bo Dash. If you don't want to tell your story, you don't have to, young man. All Might says, giving him a flat look. Still, he does seem a bit amused, so Izuku just snorts and actually starts his story rather than apologizing. Izuku Midoria, aged 4, was curious why his quirk hadn't manifested yet, when suddenly a feeling pressed into his body, and he blinks, reaching behind his back, and forming a leather-bound book, which he brings around to look at. The book has teacher engraved into metal bolted to the front cover of it. It's fancy, like all those books he'd seen drawn for fantasy comics, but also much smaller than the books he'd seen his mom reading. He opens it to the first page, to see that he can understand the writing, despite only having a loose grasp on certain characters before. Chapter 1, Introduction. Hi. This is a book about your quirk, Izuku. It's called Font of Knowledge and it allows you to do quite a few things. Over the next few pages I'll list out the features and there'll be a few pictures to help you understand. Izuku flips the page and sees an image of a chibi-style Izuku nodding while a bunch of different alphabets are shown on a chalkboard. Even some that Izuku can't name. First is that you can understand and write coherently in any written language that exists. But it still requires study to understand the verbalized versions of the words. Whoa, Izuku mutters, mouth agape as he flips to the second page. He's greeted with a short comic of Chibizuku pulling a book out from behind his back, opening it, and realizing he doesn't have a pencil, before also reaching behind his back and producing a pencil. Second is the summoning of blank books and myself. You can do that by reaching behind your back and mentally requesting the book that you want. This function also works with writing utensils. Any books you summon cannot be read or even interacted with by anyone but you. And writing utensils can be used to do whatever you want to. There's a small image of him trying to show a book to 2 featureless figures. Both of them have their heads tilted and question marks above their heads. Chibizuku is visibly distressed by this. Izuku's mouth remains open as he looks to the next page. Another small comic, this time of the previous Chibizuku who was trying to show those figures his book. He rubs his chin, then gets an idea and grabs a stack of paper from his backpack, then places his hand on both the stack and the book. After a brief glow, he shows the stack to the others, who seem to suddenly understand what Chibizuku was trying to say, if the last panel of Chibizuku giving a bright smile and thumbs up was supposed to mean anything. Third is that you can print copies of other tomes except me so that others might read them. All you need is paper to do that, though other materials along with the paper will make the book more permanent. So I can make notes and share them? Great. He flips to the next page, and is greeted by a strange image, of a book slamming into a black and sinister-looking orb, knocking it far away. It's designed much like Teacher. Fourth is the reason I exist. Font of Knowledge breaks the curse of ignorance off of you, and allows you to learn magic. As Teacher, I am the function by which you will learn magic. Ah, that explains the shape of the book, he thinks, the idea of magic existing being something he easily just nods along to and moves on from. Quirks do weird stuff, if his gives him actual magic, then that's pretty awesome, but he still has more introduction to go through. He looks to the next page. An image of Chibizuku tilting his head as he thinks of something, and he seems distressed as he can't remember that thing, is right next to a comparison of a Chibizuku seeming fine as he easily recalls something he wrote down. Fifth is with the blank tomes. The information you write in blank tomes made with Font of Knowledge is permanently etched into your memory until a time at which you erase that information. Meaning you will never lose any notes you take within the blank tomes. Izuku nods easily and flips to the last pages of this chapter. He guesses that makes sense if he can just summon up any previous books he's made. The information had to be stored somewhere. He's greeted by a graph with a whole bunch of numbers and a Chibizuku seeming to slowly age and learn something new with each number on the graph. Izuku looks to the bunch of words at the bottom. This graph denotes how as you age you'll unlock new chapters in the Teacher tome. Ah, so as I get older it'll let me learn new things about magic. Cool. He looks to the next page to see an image of Chibizuku bowing with a light smile. End of introductions. Feel free to read the next chapter, senses, when you get the chance. Izuku nods a little. Thank you, Teacher-san. He shuts the book, and feels a small itch to take notes so he doesn't forget. His mom called it Quirk Instincts, right? He summons a new book, this one blank, along with a pencil to write with, and starts writing down everything he thinks about in terms of what his quirk can do. His thoughts are lost to the world until eventually his mom knocks on his door. Izuku is jolted out of his thoughts with the sound of the knock, and his blank tome now denoted Quirk Notes disappears along with the pencil he was using. He stands up excitably. Mama, Mama! I got my quirk. Mama blinks. Really? What is it? She asks. Izuku reaches behind his back and produces the same book he'd been taking notes in. He flips it open, and realizes he's not sure how to say half the words he wrote down. And that mom can't read it. Izuku's face pinches. I need paper. About 5 sheets? He asks, petering out at the end because he's not sure he pronounced that correctly. Mom nods. Okay. She walks off and quickly returns with the paper. Izuku places his left hand on his book and his right hand on the paper. Almost instantly he feels a twitch, which he flexes, and the paper flashes briefly, before words appear on the page. He also feels something get drained, which he doesn't bother with for now as he lifts the paper for his mom to see. She quickly reads through the papers, and gives Izuku a lightly humored look. So you can instinctively understand any written language and how to write in it, but when it comes to talking about it, you don't understand how to say what was written. Izuku nods, blushing a little. And you can't just show your notes to me because I won't be able to read your books even if you try to show me. The magic thing? Okay, here's how we're going to register your quirk. Mama grabs a pen and starts writing on the back of the last page. Izuku tilts his head curiously, looking at what was written on the page. Quirk, font of knowledge. Description, user can conjure books and writing utensils. Any book made by the user cannot be read by outside sources except through a copy. All information stored within the book is stored within the user's mind, and the user can summon these books by giving them titles. We're leaving out the magic and the teacher book? I want you to be older before you tell anyone about that part, okay, Izuku? 14 at the earliest. That's around the time Izuku would unlock the combat chapter of teacher. Izuku blinks at her. Okay, but why? There's some nastiness about quirks as flexible as yours will be, so it's best we keep that under wraps as best we can until you're old enough to deal with that nastiness. Izuku nods, determination igniting inside. For now though, I'll help you learn how written words are said. And if you want you can continue reading teacher to learn more about your abilities. Izuku nods rapidly. Yes. He excitedly starts muttering about different ways he could apply his quirk. His mom worriedly watches on. Izuku hums as he reads through Teacher, specifically, Chapter 1, Senses. The start of the magic journey requires the user be able to sense mana. Specifically their own, internal mana. This chapter will teach you how to do that. There's an image of an Chibizuku with glowing eyes on the first page. It'll also teach you how to affect or create new senses for yourself. Such as night vision and other things like that. Izuku nods and flips the page. He looks at the short comic and hums. The secret to sensing mana lies in finding your own core, or pool, of mana, which resides somewhere in the center of the chest. Breathe deep with eyes closed, no other senses active. Then focus on what happens as you activate your quirk. Okay. Izuku sits up from where he was laying on his belly and reading the book. He closes his eyes, as his room was already quiet and there were no overwhelming smells. He takes a deep breath, and summons his quirk notes. He feels like his brain half reboots as he feels something shift from his chest through to the arm he put behind his back, then formed the book. He dismisses the book, and feels the mana from the book re-enter his body, and as he follows it, he finds a ball of, some kind of energy in his chest. He summons a pencil and feels the same feeling. He opens his eyes, and finds that the feeling stuck around. He can still tell that the energy is there, and he can use it to summon his books and writing utensils. He looks at teacher and pulls it to his side using the new energy unsummoning and resummoning it with a flick of his wrist. So, that is your mana pool. As stated previously, you can grow your pool by adding more knowledge to your books. It's very dangerous for someone at your age to cast anything outside of a quirk, so let's take this nice and slow, alright? Izuku nods. His mom had thoroughly made sure Izuku wouldn't disobey teacher by telling him he wouldn't get dessert for a week each time he ignored teacher's warnings. Somehow she knew teacher would warn him of some kind of danger. So, first section done. On to the next, influencing your senses using mana. From then on, Izuku learns how to use his mana, it works by channeling mana while imagining what it should do. Though the limitations were apparent to him, as for the first 2 years of his quirk training, he could only learn spells that give him or enhance his senses. Granted, his own curious nature and interest in the subjects made it so he learned the whole chapter front to back, so he is able to create and understand new senses on the fly without a headache. On his 6th birthday he gets the vague feeling that his quirk has new stuff for him to learn along with actually knowing it, so even if he hadn't copied down the table, he still would have looked into the book today. It's not like he made any friends at school, so he and his mom just had a small celebration at home. So as soon as they were done with that, Izuku started reading the new chapter. Chapter 2, Bodily Enhancement. Magic can be used to reinforce the body as well. Much like with senses, you can use magic to enhance all the faculties of your body. This magic is dangerous to experiment with, so heed all warnings. Understood? Izuku gulps and nods. Skimming over the comic about Chibizuku forcing all of his mana into one spot to reinforce it and that spot exploding with gory explosion written out over what looks like a small smoke bomb. Izuku follows the instruction over the next few pages. Sit on the ground, and let mana flow through him, permeating his bones, skin, veins, and muscles, to reinforce them. The page tells him it's a simple body enhancement spell called Reinforcement, which just makes him generally stronger in both durability and physical strength. It also teaches him a spell called Self-Heal, which helps him when he gets an injury, though the spell does tire him out fast. It's essentially an application of reinforcement that increases the strength of both his immune system and his natural healing rate. This chapter takes far less time for Izuku to handle, as it's mostly just teaching him how to control his mana while within his body to get varying and different effects out of reinforcement-type spells. There are a few times where Izuku gets dangerously low on mana while experimenting, but he always stops himself before going too far. The next chapter comes in much the same way. Izuku's 8th birthday rolls around, and yet again he checks the book. Chapter 3, Projection. This is where things start to pick up. The ability to push mana out of your body, and control it while it's out there. It's not a difficult thing to learn, but it is the hardest thing to master. A basic application of this magic is telekinesis. Reaching out with mana to grab an object with a hand of mana. By learning the magic of senses and body enhancement, you should be able to learn this chapter fairly quick. Izuku takes a deep breath, and slowly controls his mana so it leaves his hand for the first time. All of his magic sense spells are active and he watches as a ghostly green version of his own hand reaches out from where his hand was and grabs a pencil, dragging it to Izuku's waiting hand. So I really can, Izuku mutters, then pulls out another book, this one already titled, Projection Notes. He's 8 now, which means, nothing, really. Not in the grand scheme of things. He's still not really able to walk around outside on his own, teachers are still being annoying about him not making friends in school, and all he wants to do is study. After he sets the pencil back down, he walks to his mom. Mom, can I please go to the library? Inko looks at him, and sighs as he gives his puppy eyes. All right. She nods and stands up, then hums while Izuku cheers a bit. Izuku, I'm going to make a deal with you. Izuku blinks and looks at her. As long as you don't try to go past your current grade level in school, you can study as much as you want. What do you mean? Izuku asks. I mean don't try to skip grades or school levels. Stay in your age group. Mom replies. Probably to make it easier for me to socialize. I'd probably find it even more tiring to talk to people older than me anyway. Izuku gives a nod. All right, I'll do that. Oh, and if you get concerned about differences between your notes and what the teachers are saying, tell me and I can help you figure that out. Izuku smiles. That sounds awesome. Great. Thanks, Mom. He has a theory about why she's so adamant about him staying with his age group. Most likely she wants him to still be social with those his age, which is... Well, he's not good at that anyway, but he'll respect that idea, since it also seems like a challenge to do his own studying. And that sounds fun. It takes Izuku a year to have the projection chapter fully memorized and experimented with. As it turns out, there are 3 types of projected spells. The first ones are things like telekinesis, where you form a thread of mana from your core to something else. Concentration spells, as teacher called them. The second type is fueled spells, where you create an effect and expend all of the required mana at once. Izuku has a spell like that which essentially boosts someone's healing ability and immune response for a minute after he activates it. He stress cast it because his mom accidentally cut herself while cooking once. He's still under strict orders to not create attack spells until he turns 14 unless it's a serious situation, so he can't really create any other spells in this category. The third type is a mix of the two, named fueled controlled spells. Creating something using mana and fueling it before firing it off, but then using a small thread of mana to control the spell afterwards but not fuel it. Izuku doesn't have any spells like this when he turns 9. Though he has played around enough to understand the theory behind it. Izuku gives the 4 a glance, seeing that the potion is almost entirely in Yagi's system. The man also seems to be blown away by something. Izuku decides to ignore it for the sake of finishing the story. After that, I got my next chapter at age 9. Izuku explains. Really? I thought it would have followed the same 2-year pattern. Yagi says. Izuku shrugs. There was a lot to teach and teacher was really adamant that I learned all I could as fast as I could. Anyway, the next chapter was on elements and how those fit into magic. Izuku grins as he reads the next chapter of his book, seeing a glyph with several strange symbols on it. Chapter 4, Elements. Elements are exactly how they sound. Mana is weaved together with someone's image of an element, and thus the spell takes on said element. There are 7 primary elements. Air. The freedom of emotion. Water. The playful creator. Fire. The chaos. Earth. The nurturing shelter. Light. The energetic brightness. Dark. The drowsy eliminator. Spatial. The unknowable rule. Over the course of this chapter, you will be taught how to control all of these elements to a strong degree. You will also learn several smaller lessons. Such as, affinity. Izuku hums, noting down all of the elements and their titles, for lack of a better term before moving on. You can think of affinity like talent. You have talent in drawing, so you're pretty good, and you're fast at learning techniques. You don't have much talent in music, but that doesn't mean you can't learn to play an instrument, it just means you take a while to get to the same level as someone with talent. Normally there's a lot of testing that goes into learning one's elemental affinity, but since you have me, I can just tell you. Izuku scratches his chin at that, tilting his head a little. Wait, magic is... Wow, you realize that on your own? Tashanori wonders, seemingly making Midoria realize he just said, magic is real aloud. I had to get told that by my mentor. Midoria stares at him for a long while, before suddenly and quickly intoning, secure speaking space, and gesturing with a hand. All of the walls are quickly covered in a green, shimmering substance. All of the doors and windows having a green lock symbol on them. The ones that were open slam shut at the same time, making Tashanori jolt just slightly. Unlike Recovery Girl, Midoriya is willing to admit that it was on him for that jolt. Sorry. I need to calm down. He takes a deep breath, but the spell does not get released as he seems to mellow out a bit. Tashanori nods. If you'd like, I can tell you how I know that. After you're done with your story. Midoriya nods, and takes a deep breath. Yeah. I came to that conclusion because of it saying showing my affinity is a way of making it easier, rather than it just being part of my quirk that it can measure. Then I looked back and it was saying stuff like that from the start. Hinting at the fact that I'm not the only person who could potentially use magic. I think I have an idea as to why you're so cautious, but care to explain that part? Midoriya hums, well, at first it was general, that's what happens in fantasy books, so I really don't want to incur whatever organization has been keeping it under wraps wrath. Midoriya shrugs. But, it escalated into all too real when I unlocked the combat chapter. Tashanori gulps a little. You know those random typhoons that keep popping up over the ocean then disappearing? Tashanori doesn't, but the fact that Midoriya is bringing it up. Well, needless to say his eyes widen. Yeah. Teacher said, hey, this might be something that you'll need, and taught me how to create and control typhoons with my magic. I have so much mana now that I can do it for half an hour while constantly producing all of the usual natural disasters from a typhoon, and still have the mana to teleport back home all the way from the middle of the Pacific. Midoriya sighs as Tashanori continues to calculate the enormity of that kind of weather phenomena. A typhoon is the size of a whole state back in the US. Hell, hurricanes the size of the entirety of Japan have shown up before. Not even mentioning the fact that she said all of the natural disasters from a typhoon. Lightning, thunder, high-speed wind, tornadoes. The feeling of the vestiges wanting him to give one for all over strengthens. Midoriya stretches his arms a little bit. So, should I keep going? I'm gonna leave the barrier up just in case you want to talk about magic stuff. Tashanori nods, leaving behind all of the chaotic thoughts that he was stuck in. Yes, sorry, just trying to imagine the implications of that level of weather phenomena and what you would possibly need that for. Midoriya shrugs. No problem. I'm gonna skip over the deep details on how the elements work, but essentially you put a strong image of the element in question into your mana, then you can use that element. Most of my mana-efficient spells are more advanced forms of telekinesis than anything. One of my firebolt spells pulls heat from the air to gather the thermal energy. Water bullet is the same concept just with the moisture in the air. The other two primal elements are pretty evident. Control air with mana, control earth with mana. Primal elements? Oh, right. Fire, earth, water, and air are the 4 primal elements of the 7 primary elements. Light, dark, and spatial magics are called obscure. Primals are things we can see, feel, and touch. Obscures are things that, while we can perceive them, they don't work like that in practice. Like sure, with dark element magic you can just create shadows or make a room really dark, but what dark actually is destruction. Specifically, it gets rid of something. Heat, light, that poison you accidentally ate, the gun someone's firing at you. So on. Light gives something. Energy, that arm you lost, nutrients, a nasty cancer to your enemies. So on. And then spatial is the manipulation and absolute wrecking of physics. In its purest form it's the manipulation of the space between X and Y. To teleport, you need to shorten the distance to a step. During my fight against that minion summoner I increased the distance between myself and the demons. So that every time they tried to hit me they whiffed because while physically they seemed to be close to me, they were actually a couple of kilometers away. None of them were quite able to figure that out. That makes a weird amount of sense to Tashanori. But then how did you move? He hadn't actually dug up any footage from the fight. Most of it was removed from normal spaces for showing a miner slaughtering monsters while grinning maniacally. Midoria shrugs. I only ever temporarily put the space increase barrier up. It's far more costly than even the typhoon spell. Since it increases space, while still not affecting time, gravity, pressure, or anything like that. It shreds every single known law about anything to do with physics to pieces. And mana is the cost to do that. Tashanori is almost scared to ask, but he persists. How is conjuring a typhoon less costly than that? A hurricane may be more destructive, but all I need to do is grasp enough clouds to make it start raining. The rest is just wind magic and a little light. I have an extra sense that lets me see clouds even if they're on the other side of the earth. Then I just have to grab them with telekinesis, and drag enough of them to me that, Midoria snaps his fingers, and Tashanori's eyes widen as he hears the gentle pitter-patter of water against the window. Don't worry, it's just a small rain cloud this time. He waves a hand, and shortly after, the rain stops. Anyways, shall I continue with the story? Tashanori nods, and Midoria hums a bit. Okay, so the next chapter was called Enchanting. When Izuku turns 10 he gains a new chapter. Chapter 5, Enchanting. Enchanting is the art of endowing objects with magical effects through the use of special crystals that act as batteries for the magic to take energy from. Why it works like this is hotly debated, but it does, therefore it is a useful tool. You can also carve or otherwise put enchanting runes directly onto an object, but that tends to make things far more sentient than normal and requires the object user to supply the mana to the enchantment. First step, acquire a special crystal. These crystals are made from mana, so you can easily do this as well. Portion out a small amount of mana, then condense it. Apply pressure on the mana from all sides until the mana is no longer within your control and becomes solid. Izuku decides to do just that, creating a small ball on top of his hand, then pushing it in on itself. After a few seconds, a crystal the size of a grain of sand appears, then after a few more the ball has completely crystallized. Cool. He goes back to reading. You'll need a set of tools to properly enchant things. These mana crystals are part of the material used to create the tools. Izuku hums a little, rolling the ball around in his hand. Essentially enchanting requires a material called mana steel in order to scribe runes onto the mana crystal. Mana steel is created in much the same way as steel. I personally made it by getting some steel from a supply then using various spells to fold the crystal into the metal. It took a lot of control to keep my mana from consuming the crystal, but I managed. Izuku coughs and switches thoughts. The rune language isn't actually useful as a written language, it essentially acts as magic programming. For example, Izuku reaches into his messenger bag and pulls out a small knife with a sheath that has a dimly glowing blue gem. He pulls it from the sheath and the blade instantly lights on fire. The runes I put on this little guy were basically fire resistance, fire emission. I use it to weld or cut soft metals. The runes on my bag are complicated but it turned my bag into a massive space with no gravity on anything inside and a mental component that lets the wearer know what all is inside. Oh, and a special genetic keying to me so that nobody else can lift it or the flap on it. Not to mention the fact that it can't be affected by most elements now and physical attacks are resisted. It took a really long time to make, before you ask. Izuku bluntly states. Had to program everything and the trial and error phase was almost long enough to make me give up, but eventually I managed to make a gem that could fit that many runes on it, he snorts. But then I had to make it bigger so I could add a shrinking enchantment for the gem. The bag was actually an assignment I got from the book to help with my practice, though the book only started giving me assignments after I had finished the apothecary section, which I only got after turning 13. The next thing I learned was alchemy, which is arguably the most extreme magic craft, even next to the poisons I can make using apothecary. Izuku moves on to the next thing without giving Yagi the space to question him. Izuku, 12 years old now, blinks as he opens teacher to the new chapter. Izuku, this next chapter is going to reveal to you possibly the most dangerous yet useful craft that you can learn. So first I'm going to drill you on all of the safeties that you need. First off, this is a separation circle. Do not touch the inside of the circle while there is any trace of mana inside it. If you do, the potential ramifications are fatal. There's a complicated circle with various runes inside displayed on the page. In this chapter you will also learn a spell called Dismantle, which will deconstruct an item and form it into usable materials rather than a completed product. Do not, under any circumstances, aim this spell at any who you do not have the intent to destroy or kill. Izuku gulps and nods. There will be other warnings. Heed them. There is no room for error when it comes to the safeties of this branch of Mystic Raft. Izuku nods again. He'd already burned his hand on an enchanted crystal. He didn't need pain possibly worse than that. He turns to the next page. Chapter 6, Alchemy. Alchemy, at a base level, is the study of materials and their interactions with both magic and the world around them. It is also the manipulation of said properties. The craft was created by Odin, the ruler of knowledge and crafts. Master alchemists can turn sunlight into thread, the flap of a bird's wings can become an ingot. The intangible becomes tangible. The adept can alter the properties of materials to suit whatever they need. Steel can be turned into light, soft fabric that can take the might of a dragon to burn. But all must start at the beginning, the improvement of raw materials through purification and combination. Izuku stares, already imagining the absurd amount of uses for this kind of craft. Don't get too excited about this one. I still haven't mastered it. I've gotten comfortable with my adept level, but the mastery section is one of the most utterly archaic and confusing things I've ever tried to learn. It's a mixture of enchanting, real-world physics, and magic that makes my brain hurt. You're already better than I would have been. Yagi admits. So is this around the time that you became a recycler? Izuku shakes his hand back and forth. This chapter is how, it's not when I became a legal one. I didn't realize I could be paid to do that work until I was already applying for becoming a healer. Around that time is also when things got a little bit thrown off in my life. I ended up moving schools because of it. Izuku says, looking at the 4 again. The potion is completely gone. Now, I will heal you, then finish the story while you recover from the inevitable nausea. I'll also have to provide you with nutrient-rich pills to take with breakfast. Yagi is honestly lucky that Izuku was already at the stage of changing the properties of materials, since just the smell of the nutrient potions would normally make someone throw up. Why would there be nausea? You've been living for a year without that chunk of yourself. To suddenly regain it will throw off your nerves and sense of balance. Not to mention that all of said nerves will likely be new and thus hypersensitive. You might even feel the non-harmful bacteria in your stomach for a few seconds before your nerves resettle. Izuku stands up and pulls out a book, briefly looking at the description for the spell he's planning on using, just to make sure he absolutely knows what he's doing. He takes a deep breath, and touches a hand to Yagi's wound. Burn away all scar tissue, replace all parts within the afflicted area with new organs, muscles, skin, bones, and other tissues. Take sample and duplicate non-harmful bacteria to place in the new organs. His internal monologue continues, listing off the full process he wants the healing spell to take, his mana pulsing on the air. It's like a storm is raining down right next to him. The feeling of Midoriya's mana as his eyes start glowing and he holds his hand to Tashanori's wound. Healing magic, Phoenix intervention, Midoriya intones. And with those words, a red fire bursts from his wound and slowly starts to cover Tashanori's body. It's not a painful feeling though, more of a pleasant warmth. Yagi closes his eyes to enjoy the feeling. Then the tingly feeling of nerves waking up starts emanating from all over his body, especially around and inside where his wound was. He shivers a little at the feeling. Luckily it ebbs away quickly and he opens his eyes to see Midoriya holding out a glass vial of something. Quickly shoot this back and it should return all of the necessary missing nutrients. I didn't think about the fact that you were probably scarred all over, so I miscalculated the dosage of the initial nutrient potion. Luckily I did have enough wherewithal to still bring enough for a second dose. Tashanori nods and does as asked, shooting back the potion. You'll still be prone to hives for a while and any patches of skin that were scarred will be hypersensitive for a few days. Midoriya then also places a wooden box on the table next to Tashanori's bed. These are pills of the same kind as the potion. Stick to small, soft, easy-to-digest meals for a few days and no American food for at least a month. Also check with Recovery Girl just in case. I'm fairly sure I got everything, but it never hurts to be thorough. Tashanori's eyebrows draw together a little. Will your magic interfere with her understanding of normal healing and treatments? Midoria shakes his head. No, it shouldn't. I'll write her the specs of the pills and potions I gave so she has all the information though. Tashanori nods wordlessly, and the sudden movement makes his head swim, for some reason. What the hell? He squints in pain as the sound of his voice is extremely loud. Midoria answers his question in, now that Tashanori isn't disoriented by other feelings, he can tell is a whisper. You likely had an injury in your ears. Even if it wasn't enough to disorient you normally, it still can cause issues after so long of you being used to the feeling. Tashanori blinks, curious as to how Midoriya knew that, but eventually he just decides against questioning it further. Midoriya continues, okay, that's my job done, but I assume you want me to continue with the story? If you would. Tashanori says, muttering slightly. Even inside his mouth his voice feels loud. Well then, next up is when things actually got a little bit interesting in my personal life. Midoriya starts telling his story. Izuku, in middle school now, looks at his 2 books, one was for his self-study into quirk laws and history, and the other was what the school was telling him. They don't line up. At all. Now, don't get Izuku wrong, he's used to his own research in history being different from the teacher's way of telling it, but the fact that the quirk law teachings don't at all line up with actual quirk laws feels dangerous to Izuku. He grabs a stack of paper his mom got him for when he wanted to copy his notes and copies both his personal notes on quirk law and the school version before leaving his room. Mom? He asks. His mom looks up from the TV and smiles at him. Done studying, kiddo? Izuku shakes his head. Never. His mom chuckles. There's just something I don't understand. He holds out the 2 stacks, and mom nods, taking them. She first reads the one titled, Quirk Laws, Research, and when she reaches the end, she nods, giving Izuku a pat on the head. Good job, sweetie. Very accurate. Izuku grins, happy his effort is being acknowledged. She then starts reading Quirk Laws, School Notes, and almost instantly she starts grimacing. Once she reaches the end, she gives Izuku a worried look. Do they really let your classmates just use their quirks at any time? Izuku nods, and she sighs. And all this other stuff is reinforced by your other teachers? Once again, he nods. Okay. Her expression is pinched. I'm going to make a few calls. Thanks for telling me. Izuku blinks at her. All he did was show her, there wasn't much telling involved at all. Still he gives a final nod and goes back up to his room, smiling lightly at being in the presence of all of his books again. As he settles in for more research, he feels a new set of pages appear on Teacher, strangely not attached to any previous chapters. He pulls out the book and his mouth drops open a little. Chapter 8, Rituals. Rituals are essentially magical performances that mortals can do for spirits that create long-lasting special effects. Most rituals are for more mundane things such as a dance to create rain. Some can also summon beings not from Earth. The reason I waited so long for this chapter to appear is because rituals often must be performed with strange conditions. Including but not limited to during an eclipse while you are in the shadow, the winter equinox, the witching hour on the day of Samhain, while a crow is pecking at you, and so on. Izuku snorts a little at that last odd requirement, but keeps reading. The first rite you can perform is for your health going forwards. It'll essentially make it so you'll go through a more optimized PBRTY. Izuku's cheeks tinge a little red, but he continues reading, interested in this new magic thing. It's a good launching point, which is why I waited to give it to you until you were just about to start going through that process anyway. Once again Izuku nods, cheeks fully reddened at the fact that Teacher somehow knows that he's going to start PBRTY soon. As he continues reading, he blinks and starts taking notes, sketching in the ritual circle, which is the requirement to perform this particular rite. Chalking the circle exactly correctly and chanting while standing in the middle of it. I'd honestly forgotten that I got that particular chapter unlocked on the same day until I started telling this part. Midoriya mutters, cheeks tinged a little red. Well, that explains why you seem a bit mature for your age. You don't seem to suffer from mood swings nearly as harshly as I did, anyway. Midoriya nods. Yeah, that was one of the benefits. While still maturing I don't get chemical imbalances or anything like that. How many of these rituals did you perform? Izuku takes a moment to count. 4. The other ones were to increase my knowledge processing capabilities and another to make me faster and more balanced. The last one is the familiar ritual. Come on out, Jade. A mote of light seems to burst from Midoriya's back and lands on the ground as a dark green wolf with glowing green eyes. The wolf makes a quiet barking noise and bows its head in greeting before gleefully accepting pets from Midoria. Tashanori stares with wide eyes. This is Jade. She was a dog I discovered. Exactly what state she was in before I found her can be talked about later. Tashanori nods, unable to form words despite not liking the amount his head swims when he moves it. Wanna return, Jade? Or would you prefer to stay out? Jade looks up, meeting Midoriya's eyes, and eventually Izuku lets loose a slight laugh. Okay, but you'll have to go back before we leave the room. Jade gives a nod. Are you able to understand each other? Midoriya nods. Yeah, she's bound to me through my mana, so she shares my knowledge. She's able to telepathically communicate with others as well, but it uses mana so she tends not to do it with anyone but me, as talking with me is essentially free. Interesting. I might ask you for your notes on that particular ritual. My therapist has been trying to get me to adopt a pet lately. Then you'll have to also perform the return to normalcy rite on the familiar, which allows them to become a normal-looking animal at will. I didn't do that with Jade because she just looks like a large Quirk dog to anyone not adept at spotting the traits only featured in wolves, but my mom did that with Sylvia, who is normally a griffin but can turn into a normal-looking cat or bird at will. Aren't griffins huge? Midoriya shrugs. Not unless they shrink down, which both familiars can do. Apparently it's for convenience's sake. Tashanori blinks, and just nods, gesturing for Midoriya to continue. Anyway, Mom told me the next day we were going out to a restaurant meet with one of her friends. Izuku blinks as his mom makes a gasping noise. Mitsuki? It's been forever. Mom shouts. Izuku looks ahead to see a woman wearing a leather jacket turn with a fierce glare that instantly softens upon seeing his mom. Inko. You're right, it has been. They start chatting and Izuku almost immediately starts tuning them out. He looks around for something interesting and finds a guy around his age that looks exactly like the woman his mom just started a conversation with. Izuku gives him an awkward smile and wave. The guy snorts and gives a smirk and lazy half-wave. Moms, huh? The boy starts. Izuku lets out a light groan. Yeah. Moms. Mine started a conversation with a cashier that felt like ours. Given that they both seem like old friends, we might need a crowbar to end this conversation. The other boy snorts. Bakugo Katsuki. You. Midoriya Izuku. Izuku answers easily, smiling a little at Bakugo. So, what are you here for? Bakugo shrugs. Mom wanted me to meet an old friend of hers. It's your mom, isn't it? Izuku gives a half nod and taps his mom on the shoulder. She looks over. Shouldn't we get seated before talking? He doesn't miss that her cheeks tinge a little red as she nods. The two parents guide the two children to a table, and everyone sits down. Izuku next to Bakugo, Inko next to Mitsuki. So, Izuku, your mom tells me you're the studious type? Izuku nods to Mitsuki. Yeah. I'm probably already at low high school level in core subjects. Really? Bakugo asks. How? Izuku shrugs a little. I enjoy studying and everything I write down in these. Izuku reaches into his jacket and pulls out a tome. Is memorized. Izuku, mom's voice warns, and Izuku sighs, putting the tome back. He makes those tomes with his quirk and dismisses them as well. His quirk has other bells and whistles, but the main thing he uses it for is that. You know, that doesn't really sound like yours or Hisashi's quirks. Mitsuki says. Mom shrugs. I called the clinic about it. Turns out the donor was actually such an old file they weren't actually sure what quirk the person that donated had. Katsuki and Izuku start talking too, so Izuku ignores his mom's conversation. So your quirk lets you memorize anything you write down in your tomes. Mine lets me make explosions with my palms. Katsuki says eventually, after a long conversation about favorite heroes. Both boys really like All Might, but their second favorites drift from time to time. Katsuki's main second being Present Mic and Izuku's main being anywhere from Best Jeanist to some vigilantes. Really? Cool. How loud of an explosion can you make? Izuku has another tome in his hands, this one called Quirk Studies. I never tried my limit. But I think I could create a flashbang level sound if I needed to. And I assume you haven't tried the largest explosion either. Katsuki shakes his head rapidly, looking slightly scared of the idea. No. My explosions are really destructive. Katsuki says, grimacing. Izuku eyebrows twitch, drawing together a little. It's not about the screwdriver's appearance, but how you use it. What? Something I learned by browsing forums for quirk nerds like me. Katsuki snorts as Izuku prepares to rant a little. Quirks are part of the human body. They can be controlled and regulated unless they're sentient. So therefore it's impossible for a quirk to be villainous, heroic, neutral, or any other nonsense to try and assign sentience to something that's just a genetic function. You could make the argument that sentient quirks can be villainous, and while that's kinda possible, it's also stupid. Assumptions cause biases, and biases have this annoying tendency to make truth where previously there wouldn't be any. I think my friends would like you, Katsuki eventually says after staring, wide-eyed, at Izuku. The green-haired boy shrugs. So have you tried to make your brightest explosion? Once again, Katsuki shakes his head, and honestly that's starting to frustrate Izuku a little. Izuku writes down the stats he can think of for hand-emitted explosions before calming down. I'll have you test those later. It wouldn't be happening until Izuku finished making and enchanting his own testing range. When? Katsuki has an amused eyebrow raised. Izuku shrugs. When I've set up a space for it. He eats a little bit, and once finished he looks over at Katsuki again. So, you got a favorite color? Burnt orange. The other boy answers easily. Mine's red. Green grows on me a bit too much. Katsuki snorts, and Izuku takes that as a win. Favorite music genre? Classical. Symphonic metal if I'm in the mood for something strong in energy. Don't like vocals much though. Cool. My playlists are kinda like if you threw 100 darts at a spinning wheel of the different music genres. It's all over the place. Got any recommendations for symphonic metal? It's a genre he hadn't heard of before. Katsuki nods. There's a public radio on my usual site that plays all no-lyrics symphonic metal. I can send you the link if you want. Izuku returns the nod and fishes out his phone, holding it up so Katsuki can touch the back of his phone to Izuku's and thus exchange contact info. The pair do, and Katsuki quickly sends the link before putting his phone away again. It's the same site me and mom use, so no issues there. Izuku also puts his phone away. The two chat away while their parents have their own separate conversation. Izuku would later find out that he's going to a new school, and thus he and his mother were moving out of the apartment to a larger house. Izuku, we've always had more than enough budget to live in a larger house. Inko says when Izuku mentions his concerns about money. I just preferred the smaller space so I could keep an eye on you better in your younger years. Besides, you need more space for your experiments with your quirk and stuff anyway. A house would let us make more modifications as needed. You'd get a bigger bedroom and I'm not likely to drive, so you'd also be able to use the garage if we get one. She pulls him towards her. Plus, who knows, maybe at that school you'd actually make friends. Izuku pouts a little at that. He tries to socialize, honestly. But every DMN time he mentions his pastime of researching and studying everyone looks at him with this pitying energy. As if he couldn't do anything else. He could. His mom has tried to make him. He just doesn't enjoy much else besides studying. It's quiet, it's fun, it increases his mana stockpile, and most importantly, it's relaxing after a long day of dealing with everyone around him being so goddamn high energy. While not obvious to him, another reason he's quite bad at socializing is because he already sounds like a crotchety old man rather than a 12-year-old. It tends to unsettle his fellows. They get moved into a new house almost absurdly fast. His mom having explained that while yes he might not learn anything new at a different middle school, he might not have to deal with any conflicting information if he were to switch schools. He always hated writing down something just to erase it later, so he accepted the switch faster than anything once that idea was presented. It was a bit odd that his room was no longer small enough that he could cover his walls in posters enough that the walls couldn't be seen, but it was a nice sort of odd. Felt lightly warm that he had more space to put things in his room rather than needing his equipment to sometimes hang out in the living room. He even has enough space for 2 desks. His first one still holds his computer, but his second one is enchanted to have all kinds of resistances so he can work on enchanting using it. For the next few days, Izuku and Inko got used to the new space, but too soon, Izuku is forced to introduce himself to a new class. My name is Midoria Izuku. He states, smiling a little awkwardly at his new class. Transferred over from Aldera. MHM. We don't have time for a full introduction, so we'll leave it at that. You can sit behind? Ashido, the girl with the horns. Their homeroom teacher gestures, and Izuku catches the eyes of a horned, pink-skinned girl with gold and black eyes. She waves energetically. Izuku smiles a little and moves to sit behind her. Midoriya's quirk allows him to create and memorize notes, so he's permitted to use his quirk in class. A few students look at him, so he conjures a tome and a pencil as a demonstration. He'd need a new one for this anyway. Nothing all that interesting happens until lunch, when Izuku discovers exactly why his mom placed him here so fast. 2 boys entered the classroom, one with sandy blonde hair and a naturally angry look, the other with black hair and red eyes, a kinder face than his companion, despite his features being sharper. Katsuki? Izuku questions, squinting. The sandy blonde's eyes move from Ashido to Izuku. Awesome. Don't have to go on a search. He says, smirking. Good to see you again, Izuku. Izuku gives him a nod. Same to you. Both the black-haired boy and Ashido are looking between the pair like they both grew secondary heads. Katsuki gives Ashido a flat hand signaling a stop before she can even speak. Our moms know each other. We just met like half a week ago. My mom told me that he was going to transfer here. And my mom didn't tell me anything, so I couldn't research the school. Izuku says, pouting a little. Ashido stares for a moment. All right. She mutters, before seeming to regain an energetic vibe. I'm Ashido Mina. She grins. Kirishima Ijiro. The black-haired boy says. Both Kirishima and Katsuki grab seats so they can eat near Izuku and Ashido. Izuku starts eating, content to listen as the others talk around him. All three seem content to just talk to each other, occasionally looking at Izuku to get his input but otherwise letting Izuku just chill out in the background of the conversation. He pulls out one of his tomes and scribbles down Ashido and Kirishima's names, after asking them to write it out themselves, and characteristics before making rough sketches of both. Just to make sure he remembers their faces and names. Izuku looks over the circle one last time. Dawning sun sigil in the middle to represent the start of something. The moon phases sigil outside of that to emphasize consistency, and the phrase, the world turns, a child becomes an adult, coming of age, in runes written around the outer rim of all of that. Yep. It's all here. Izuku steps into the center, and starts feeding his mana into the sigils. He starts chanting, and as his voice echoes off the walls it sounds like multiple dead languages all at once. He smiles as he finishes the chant, knowing it worked by the fact that the sigil he drew disappeared. While Izuku does reminisce on that first ritual, he doesn't tell Yagi about it. Instead moving on to other things. It was pretty smooth sailing from there. I made exactly 3 friends, which is more than the none I had before I started at Muzutafu Private. Izuku says, snorting at the saddened look on Yagi's face. I'm honestly a little bit too busy to make many friends, and I don't really do socialization very well. Those 3 are just good at dealing with odd people. Izuku waves off any concern. Not much happened with that. I got the Apothecary chapter when I turned 13, he moves on. Izuku gets an excited grin on his face as he settles in for another bout of learning something new about magic. Rituals were already very interesting to learn about, and alchemy is still something he hasn't quite mastered. Not to mention all the other stuff he's already memorized. Chapter 7, Apothecary. The Magical Medicine Maker. Essentially this is the art of creating medicines and other products that have magical results on biology. Such as potions from video games and other fantasy media. This section of the book will teach you how to make these magic medicines, then you will finally be able to access one of the most important parts of the book. Assignments. Izuku blinks. He hadn't ever been told by the book to make anything. He did most things himself unless it was a practice spell or enchantment. The book never really actually said he had to do anything besides those. It makes him grin a little at the idea. Finally he'd have some sort of direction rather than just him playing around. He immediately starts reading further, finding that apothecary was essentially magic but with flowers, herbs, and other natural things, using magic to draw out certain aspects of the material. Like lavender having a slight calming effect now lets him make a draft that acts as an anti-anxiety. It takes him a week and a half to fully study the chapter. And as soon as he's done with it, teacher spawns new pages. He once again finds himself grinning at the new information being added. Assignments. Sense, body enhancement, projection, elements, enchanting, alchemy, apothecary, and rituals. You only unlock combat-based assignments after reaching age 14. Each first page for a subject has a table of contents. When you complete an assignment, the page number for that assignment on the talk for that subject is marked with a check. You cannot skip certain assignments, and I will know when you have completed one. This is the last chapter you'll unlock now. Just the section of assignments on combat magic to go. Good luck, and have fun. So yeah, after that I started truly working on improving my understanding and challenging my abilities. I'm at about adept skill level in most of my assignments. Rituals notwithstanding. How do these assignments work? Yagi asks. Well, it's all essentially based on desired effect. Most of the rituals tell me what's needed, but otherwise I'm left to my own devices to try and find a path to create the desired effect. Why aren't you at adept level with rituals if they give you more information than the spells, enchantments, and apothecary stuff? Yagi continues. Izuku grimaces a little. The next ritual I have to do to unlock more assignments is called Adopt Soul Form, and it essentially will reshape my body to match what my soul looks like. I have a spell that lets me see other people's soul forms, but I can't see my own. Given it looks like my mom has animal ears, it'll probably cause some mutations that really cannot be explained by my quirk. Plus it's supposed to help with magic control. So far I'm not having enough trouble to need that, so I'm just working through the other assignments. He doesn't address the small voice at the back of his mind whispering about how worried he is about how his soul form might look. He ignores the discomfort he feels in his chest. Long since given up on figuring out what that feeling is. After a while of silence, Izuku continues the story. Anyways, after we turned 13 we practiced CPR and I had complimented Mina. You're really good at that, Mina. Izuku says, rubbing his arms after having to try so hard at the chest compressions thing. The pink-skinned girl blushes a little. Thanks. I wanted to be a healer for a while, still kinda do, but now I think I'll just be an EMT along with rescue hero. Healer? What's that? Izuku asks. He pulls out his tome that's just pages on job analysis, pen already in hand. Mina gets a glittery look in her eyes, happy to finally have something she knows about that Izuku doesn't, in all likelihood. Well, basically, during large hero fights and disasters that end up hurting a lot of civilians, healers can be called in with the EMTs to set up an emergency area and heal the injured with their quirks. The hero's jobs in those situations is to rescue the civvies and bring them to the area, where EMTs stabilize the victims and the healers, once they get there, heal the victims as best they can. Healers are given a lot more leeway than EMTs when it comes to defending themselves and others. Saw a healer bite a villain's hand off once, heal it back to a stump, then break the arm he bit the hand off of. Izuku scribbles all of that down and hums. I have a new thing to research. Thanks, Mina. Said Pink Girl stares as Izuku walks off. Back at home, Izuku looks up everything about licensed healers and finds the requirements to become one. Especially the lack of age requirement. Quirk that either accelerates the healing process or heals altogether. Passing a healer training course at a hospital. Minus 100 hours of training with a certified doctor at a hospital. Must be completed within 3 months. Minus 20 hours of training with a licensed healer during emergencies. No time limit. Final test. Izuku writes the list into one of his tomes and copies it to a piece of paper, showing it to his mom. They'd made another deal besides the one about studying. So long as he doesn't need a college degree or some form of higher education he's allowed to pursue licenses. So she sighs as she sees the words licensed healer, probably seeing where this is going. Not until you're 14 and thus have permission from your quirk to make attack spells. Izuku nods, because honestly, that's fair. Anything that might reveal your magic needs to wait until you're 14, Izuku. Like I said all those years ago. You realize this means that I'm just going to pursue these as soon as I turn 14, right? Izuku asks, not annoyed or belligerent, just honest. Mom nods. And that'll be fine, because at least then you'll be able to defend yourself. We'll register your quirk under its full effect using a couple of my contacts once you can show me a powerful attack spell. Izuku returns her nod, smiling a little. After that is when I did the learning speed ritual and the balance ritual. Both had great effects. Izuku says, humming. What did they do? The learning one increased my learning speed by essentially overclocking both my reading and processing speeds. The balance one essentially upped my finesse and agility with movement, gave me a writing reflex, and made all forms of travel easier. The sacrifice for the learning one was that I was blind for an hour and I had to give up a copy of an informative book I loved. The sacrifice for the balance one was a freshly caught fish and a few hours of researching how to play the flute. Right, you did say they're performance-based. Yagi muses, and Izuku nods. Yep. Mostly drawing and speaking, but sometimes quite literally requiring a performance. Anyways. I got my quirk fully registered when I showed Mom my lightning bolt spell, which is exactly what it sounds like except since the energy is created by me I can make it have different effects than just energy, heat, and force. I made it so it would knock someone out instantly and make a loud boom noise to alert authorities. Though I can turn that off if need be. And, of course my mom was right in that I would need a spell like that to defend myself if my quirk was registered properly. Izuku sighs and shakes his head. Literally the day after, I was on the way to school when these assholes with masks and guns tried to knock me out with darts to kidnap me. Izuku gives the masked man in front of him a bland look as he feels the dart impact and enter his neck. Time slows down as Izuku thinks. Now, what to do, he thinks. Should I go along with their plan? No, Mom would ground me for life if she ever found out I did that on purpose. He sighs and uses magic to burn away the chemical they tried to inject him with. Now, do I get involved in a loud fight, or force this to be quiet? The answer is simple really. He doesn't want to deal with the police or heroes getting on his butt for using his quirk to fend off attackers despite it being perfectly legal for him to do so. He waves a hand and to anyone not inside the bubble that appears, the space for him to fight in seems to cease to exist. He tilts his head to the side with a bored sigh. Now then. Tell me who you work for and I won't break your teeth. He won't make guarantees about the rest of their bodies though. He plucks another dart out of the air and casts a quick spell to analyze it. Simple tranquilizer formula. His mouth pinches a little. I'm a little offended you thought this would work on me. He points a finger at the guy who shot that dart and lightning bursts from his finger silently and knocks out the target in an instant. That is how you knock someone out. He says loudly, smirking at the thugs. The other 3 thugs turn to try and run, only to be met with a solid wall of mana. You see, this space is very special. Made it myself. It's completely disappeared from others' perceptions. He stalks over to them. Either fess up and come quietly. Or fight, and come quietly when I drag your knocked out body with me. They glare, and quirks start activating. Izuku snorts and points at each of them, making lightning hit them the same as their companion. I didn't say a fight would be fair or all that climactic. He sighs and reaches into his backpack, grasping a rope he can use. He wraps all 3 in the rope, then ties said rope around his arm before activating a teleportation spell to return home, to directly inside the garage on top of a small sigil. Mom? You home? In the living room. We have a guest. Izuku can hear the annoyance in her voice at the word guest. Probably someone unwelcome who's insisting on their welcomeness. Izuku uses telekinesis to tie up the attempted kidnappers more thoroughly and places experimental anti-quirk enchanted crystals on their laps. Experimental mostly because he hasn't figured out how to turn the energy the crystal absorbs into something non-harmful to the quirk user or any item Izuku could build the crystal into. He then walks into the living room to see an old woman sitting across from his mother, some sort of bodyguard with red wings standing at attention next to her. He raises an eyebrow. Who are you? He asks. If they were going to be rude to his mother he sure as shit wasn't going to exchange pleasantries. Show some respect, boy. The old woman glares, and Izuku just gives her an unamused look. I am the director of the HPSC. Congrats. Izuku says, looking for less and less respectful ways to speak to her simply for that command being spoken in his own house. She glares at him. I was just offering your mother here a chance to sign you up to a training program. She rejected it. Izuku raises an eyebrow and holds a hand out to his mother, who passes the contract to him. Ever since doing the learning ritual he's been able to read really quickly, so he quickly scans through it, and snorts. Wow, you're surprised that a mother wouldn't want to essentially sell her 14-year-old son? Now come on boy, if she wants to protect you, the woman tries, and Izuku's glare turns poisonous. I do not need protection. He answers, trying to keep up a veneer of peacefulness. Hawks. The woman gestures with her chin and the man at her side moves. Too bad for him Izuku is faster, still having the perception speed overclocking spell on his mind from when the tranquilizer was shot at him. Lightning surrounds Izuku as he catches the feather the older boy tries to attack him with between his palms, snaps it in half, then grabs Bird Boy by the throat and throws him through a window he opened up with telekinesis. A dagger appears in Izuku's hand, summoning it from the garage. He points it at the woman. If you ever threaten me or my family, friends, loved ones, or even my acquaintances again, he releases what he calls the presence. Wind howls through the house. I will end you. He then draws a glyph underneath her in magic and uses it to teleport her right back to her office at the HPSC headquarters of Japan. He takes a deep breath, and goes outside after smiling tiredly at his mom. He grabs the contract thing and burns it to cinders with a flick of his wrist. He squats down near the winged boy, who was still stunned by Izuku's attacks. What did they do to you? He mutters, looking at the boy's brain, detection spells picking up various issues there. But they somehow seem spaced off, not quite affecting him. Still, Izuku presses a hand to the boy's head and uses a pair of alleviation spells to at least make it easier for the boy to recover from his shock. The boy blinks, and stares at Izuku, and his demeanor seems to shift an axis. Oh, they didn't tell me anything. You're a magic user? His voice doesn't seem to match his face at all. Izuku nods a little, blinking in surprise then shaking his head rapidly. Hawks just grins. Then this is the perfect place for me to end my mission. Toss up a privacy field? Izuku complies, interested in seeing where this goes. The boy seems to melt into another person entirely. Complexionless and white as paper. Not even his eyes have color. His wings melt into his back and disappear as he gets taller and taller. By the end, they don't really look to be any particular gender and their face is very much uncanny valley. Thanks, kid. Changeling work is always so DMN hard when you get caught in a tracking trap. Changeling? Oh, you're not? You're a magic user on and from Earth? Odd. The changeling remarks. Anyways, us changelings have the ability to carve our own true form to be whatever we need whenever we want. Most of us have a job as Loki's agents, replacing kids who are abused so that the real children might actually have good childhoods. It's why it's so tragically common that children run away from home never to be seen again in this day and age. Us changelings finish our missions that way most of the time. Anyways, this is where I leave. What's your name, kid? Midoria Izuku. Well, Midoria, I'm Iltiarn, Iltarrnh, you're probably going to run into a lot of us changelings in the future. As long as you help us get the mission done you'll be treated well and we'll tell our clients about your part in it. How and why would I bump into more of you? He asks. The changeling shrugs. We have ways of marking someone as an ally to this particular cause. I dunno why but you're already marked as someone who we should go to for help in ending a mission. You have the feel of someone who would fistfight an abuser if you needed to. Is it weird that I'm flattered by that? He already concludes that he thinks it's weird to be flattered by that, but wants a second opinion. Once again, the changeling shrugs. All humans are a little odd to me. Only started making sense when you manifested these quirk thingies. Anyways, thanks for the help. Bye. They give an elegant bow before disappearing in a puff of white butterflies. I'm sorry. What the hell? Yagi asks, and Izuku snorts. Yeah, that was pretty much my reaction. So far I've helped another changeling that was disguised as Toga Himiko. That girl who disappeared and was presumed dead due to the Demon King incident. Her parents didn't even pay for a funeral and I think that speaks volumes for the legitimacy of the changelings' claims that they only imitate and take away abused kids. Fing Christ. Do you know where Hawks came from? Takami Kigo. A young boy born with blood-red bird wings to a villain father and morally destitute mother. Izuku answers. Needless to say, he was replaced by a changeling nearly the month after his birth. Toga's changeling gave me the info both on her and Kigo. Why? Yagi asks. Well, Kigo's mom has joined his dad in prison, and the HPSC is walking on very thin Fing ice after it came to a certain chimera's attention that they'd paid Kigo's mother off, not to mention that they tried that sheet with my mother. Said chimera seems to have a good rapport with the Japanese government. He's fairly certain that All Might gets it now, so he goes on to the second one. And the proper authorities have been alerted to what the Togas were up to. Namely, it's been put on record that they mistreated their first child to the point that she ran away from home and tragically died due to a villain fight. So basically they give you information, which you feed to the proper channels to change things rather than let it fester. All Might says, and Izuku nods. The changelings have people like this everywhere. The one for Tokyo passed some time ago though, and they hadn't replaced them until they found me and decided I was the new one. In return I keep randomly finding things that help with the assignments in Teacher. Things I definitely didn't know before. Okay. Wait, what happened to the kidnappers? Izuku shrugs. Wasn't important to me. They were handed over to the police. Still isn't important anyways since I found a book in my home library about permanent hiding enchantments. Quite a few items on me are enchanted as such as well as my home being hidden by a big one. The only reason you could even see me at the beach was because I didn't want people to think the trash was just strangely disappearing. Yagi blinks. How many things on you am I not perceiving? Izuku looks down at himself, seeing the throwing knife belt strapped to his thighs, knife sheath on his left thigh, and his shrunken down staff holster on his right hip. He looks back at Yagi. I could potentially recreate that, pulls out a comical amount of weapons trope from cartoons. Though not quite to an extreme extent. It's just 10 throwing knives, a larger knife, and my staff. Why? Izuku shrugs. I never leave home without them really. At least, not on these kinds of outings. If I'm going to school or something I put the knives up at home. He does keep the staff though, just in case. Yagi stares for a few moments before sighing and shaking his head. As long as you aren't stabbing anyone it's not really my business. Izuku nods and moves on. Anyway, the next thing that happened was I started my healer training, which was interesting. Izuku stares at the instructor for just a moment, then nods and snaps his fingers, healing the self-made cut on the white-haired man's arm with normal unelement stuff. He looks at it, and quickly pulls out a device of some kind and looks at it through that. Odd. Seems like accelerated healing but it doesn't affect my energy, he mutters. I can also do straight healing, calming of patients, and a bunch of other stuff. Izuku says. Calming? Izuku uses a spell he devised called Tranquil Mind, which essentially has the same effect as doing the exercises to bring oneself out of a panic attack. The instructor blinks rapidly as his mind is suddenly feeling decompressed. I can think of a number of incidents where this would have been so useful to have. Okay, so you certainly have the quirk for it, Izuku grimaces but brings his face back to neutral as the instructor looks at him again. But it's another question if you have the personality required. The personality? Izuku asks. Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions to see if we can't teach you the personality. First off, as a licensed healer seeing an incident happening with no heroes nearby, say a mugging about to turn worse, do you A. back off and wait for a hero, B. call a hero to the scene, or C. move in and heal the victim? I'd personally choose B, but I have a feeling that the answer is C. The instructor nods. Correct. Healers are only called to big incidents. That doesn't mean we don't get involved with smaller ones. If you see someone injured, it is your right and duty to move in and heal them. Even villains get sent to healers after particularly gruesome battles. We are essentially the emergency response to end all emergency response. During the heavy crime rates of the early Quirk era, the amount of people needing to be brought to the hospital was getting quite absurd. So, the military conscripted people with healing quirks to do the job of EMTs when EMTs were busy elsewhere or unable to reach the site. Much like with heroes, the practice survived to the modern day to what we know it as now. Next question, he moves on. You're called in or alerted to a large-scale disaster, you make it to the police line. Do you, A. wait for an officer to ask to let you through? B. walk through while holding your license to flash it at any who try and stop you, or C. just charge through saying, healer on duty if you feel the genuine need? Izuku blinks. See, there are lives at stake, can't wait for anything, much less me retrieving my license. Good. The instructor nods. If the police try and stop you, then and only then do you show your license, and if they try and stop you for longer than it takes them to see healer, just say, right to get to the zone, before moving them out of your way if needed. Most officers know to just get the hell out of the way when someone says that. If I can teleport or otherwise fly over the police line, would that be permitted? The instructor blinks for a moment before nodding. Teleportation? Yes, as long as there's an ongoing emergency. Flight? Only if you have the proper license. There's a flight license? Izuku questions, before shaking his head as the instructor makes to explain. He'll look it up later. That's all the questions I have then. Okay. Now, you're at the emergency zone, healing up the victims of whatever disaster has struck. A hero on scene starts making noise in the zone, what do you do? Izuku grimaces. A hero making trouble or noise in the zone would certainly freak out the already anxiety-filled patients and very probably could cause worse injury than had already occurred. Get the hero to leave. I'd say non-violently, but if it escalates I probably wouldn't have time to waste getting the hero calm, so brute force if necessary. A little gentle compared to most healers, but yes. Me personally, I toss them out when they become a problem. Through Endeavor once. That was therapeutic. The stocky, white-haired man smiles a little, then waves a hand and moves on. A villain targets the emergency station. What do you do? Gather together everyone I can and make to retreat? Izuku asks after a moment of pause. Nope. The man holds his arms up in an X shape. That's the first one you've gotten wrong entirely. Good effort though. We're healers, running while carrying people is more of a hero job than ours, since we simply don't have the muscle for it most of the time. No, our job is to defend the emergency station by whatever means necessary. Meaning if a villain gets it in his head to try and attack the station and the heroes can't or don't move fast enough, that gives you full leash to use your quirk and any other thing you have on you to neutralize the threat. Izuku's eyebrows shoot up. Whoa! The man nods. That's why during this training course you will also learn how to fight if you'd like. Specifically how to fight like a healer, because most of the time if you have a quirk that can heal it can't do much else, so you have to resort to fighting dirty. And that's where we get to nicknames. Healers tend to get nicknames assigned to them because of their most infamous fights. I myself am nicknamed Ghoul because I'm pale, I have white hair, and I once bit a villain's hand off at the wrist. Granted, it's also an accurate nickname since my quirk is actually called Ghoul, though it just makes it to where I can eat all sorts of toxins and create antidotes and treatments for them from my blood, as well as give someone a healing factor by rubbing my blood on the wound. He laughs a little as Izuku grimaces. It's also extremely sterile because of the aforementioned ability to eat toxins. My blood just destroys any toxins I come into contact with and then registers them as something it can fight against even outside my body. He moves on again. While Izuku writes that down in the man's profile. So, let's get a schedule sorted and we'll get you trained up in barely any time at all. Ghoul says. Izuku gives him a nod in return, smiling at the thought of learning something. The initial training was fairly straightforward, help around the hospital and far more strict and chaotic CPR training, essentially. The test before going into the hospital and licensed healer shadowing was far more interesting. Well, the practical portion anyway. All Might nods. Healer trainees go to the rescue test for the provisional hero license exams for their own provisionals. Izuku nods. Yep. They had to specifically list me as a combat possible healer so they didn't have to send in bodyguards with me to the test. So basically I have to deal with hero students much older than me and defend the emergency station in a disaster-like scenario. Izuku states, and the exam proctor nods. You're also the only currently applying healer. He says, and Izuku just sighs and nods. Any other rules or guidelines? Do try to be a little bit restrained when it comes to your right to throw heroes out of the zone if they get rowdy. This isn't a real situation anyways. Izuku nods, I'll try, but if they cause too much trouble, they should probably learn what happens when you do that out in the real world. The proctor just nods. Besides that, no, not really. Oh, but none of the civilians have any real injuries, so keep that in mind when you heal them. Make it a bit obvious, if you could. Once again, Izuku nods, forming a plan of action for this exam. Once everything gets started, Izuku creates a loud whistling noise with magic, making the heroes turn to look at him. I'm going to set up the emergency station right here. He stabs his staff into the ground to mark the center point, then creates a ward with a 40-meter radius, marked by a glowing jade line. Nobody intending anyone within the circle harm can make it inside without sufficient force. He instates the rule. Bring any civilians you find out their back here. He then goes about setting up various areas within the zone. Specifically ones for people leaving as soon as the disaster is abated, and ones for those who still have loved ones out there. One for the lightly injured and heavily injured as well, though he'd probably just heal them all as soon as they came in anyway. And, finally, he adds something to help keep kids calm. Little fish made of his healing water mana start freely floating around. With it all fully set up, he sends up a flare, creating a bright green plus sign in the sky with a pinion pointing down, directly on the center of the zone. Needless to say, I passed, and luckily the healer test didn't require me to fight the fake villain that was brought in to test the hero students, so I didn't have to body a hero and draw more attention to myself. Though I did wind up doing that in the final test. Luckily Ryukyu doesn't hold it against me. Then, as I said earlier, I studied under a doctor working at a local hospital, who was called in on your case and thus told me about your injury so I might heal you, but you left the hospital before we could get a date pinned for me to come in. Izuku says, shrugging. I shadowed the same healer who initially taught me. Ghoul is great, when he's not teasing me about my nickname. I got my flight license, which was much different than getting my healer's license, but much, much easier to obtain, since it was just fly through this very difficult obstacle course and pass a test on these laws about human-based flight. And while I was looking up how to get a flight license, I also looked up all the different licenses one could get and discovered that you could get a quirked recycling license, selling materials obtained to the government, or keeping them if I wanted to. Though I am by law required to sell hazardous and potentially criminal materials to the government when I find them. Once again, far fewer requirements for that one compared to the healers. Just a test on some laws and proper safety procedures plus an evaluation of my ability to recycle. Got that set of requirements done the same day I found out about it, since I had been annoyed for a while that I had no idea where to put all the hazardous sheet I'd gotten from my material searches. So you get materials from trash, recycle them using this alchemy spell, then make them into new items with enchanting and the other aspects of alchemy. Yagi asks, and Izuku gives a nod. Or I just buy the material, in the case of many of my leather items, now that I have my own income due to people dumping criminal and dangerous materials illegally. Don't you also make money from healer work? Izuku shakes his head. I could, but I don't file incident reports except for very large disasters such as the Demon King. I make enough money off of my side projects and hobbies anyway. Side projects? Got into cosplay creation because one of my friends said I have no sense of style after seeing my potential hero costume. They were inarguably right, so I decided to get a bit more experience in that field by creating and selling costumes that I make. Mostly from plastic, as it's one material I can really mess around with and not worry about running out. Has it helped you with your lack of style? Yagi asks, curious. Here and there, but my friend still says I lack direction with my hero costume designs. Izuku shrugs. So, is there anything else you want to hear about, or can I cut my story here? Doesn't really require detail, but I'm curious about Jade. Simple. I saw a dog with jade-colored eyes in an alley, alone and wounded, so I healed her and named her. After naming her, I felt I had a bit of a connection with her mind and could sense what she was trying to say. After a while I felt enough trust that she and I felt comfortable doing the familiar ritual, which made her fur turn the green you can see. Then as she grew over the next month, her body shifted around to look more like a wolf. After that was over, she continued to grow, but also gained more easily understandable thoughts, the ability to turn into a tattoo on me to rest, and a few magical powers from her own species. Her own species? Yagi asks. Summoning ravens and other wolves by howling, disappearing into foliage, and general intimidation. Plus when she's a tattoo I can activate a primal strength and shapeshift slightly, like a werewolf. Izuku replies easily. And? You said your mother has a familiar as. Well? Does she know magic exists? Izuku nods. Yes. Though I didn't tell her about it until a while after I gained my full license as a healer, and she asked me about why the bird she'd found injured and named was able to so smoothly communicate with her. Had to explain at that point that technically anyone could do what I do, I can just do it easier because I have a teacher and a large knowledge base. She did the familiar ritual as a test and stared off into the middle distance for a few after it worked. We still refer to it as my quirk, and she doesn't practice magic except for a few small enchanted things that I created to help her. Why did she take in this bird? Yagi asks, understanding the practical reason not to call it magic or practice it. Keeps it secret easier. Oh, Sylvia was a raven before. She and Jade got along really well and we both found it very cute. As for why she took the bird in after seeing it injured. Well, I had to get my compassion from somewhere and it likely wasn't my donor. That's literal, by the way. My mom wasn't and isn't very interested in SXL relationships, but still wanted to be a parent. Therefore, me. Why didn't she adopt? Wasn't sure she'd make a good parent to someone who'd already developed, and her parents gave her weird ideas about adoption being somehow evil. Said she plans on adopting a kid or two once I'm out of college, but as she grew up in a very large household, she doesn't want to put another kid through that. After a moment of silence for Yagi to ponder that, he moves on. I think that's all I wanted to learn. Thank you, Midoria. Both for all your help and your very interesting tale. Izuku just shrugs. Then my work here is done and I'll let someone with an actual degree take it from here. He waves a hand and disables all of the privacy wards he'd put up, Jade hopping back inside her tattoo before surveillance could pick up on her. Nedu, do I have your permission to just teleport home? Indeed you do. Have a good day, Midoria. Izuku nods and mutters out a "you too" before creating the sigil and disappearing from the room. He reappears inside the garage at home and lets Jade come out again, hugging the dog and taking a deep breath. He's not exactly stupid. He knows All Might wanted all of that information to help the older man make a decision, but he can't really interpret what that decision is supposed to be, as his mind is not adapted to understand the thoughts of others beyond feelings. Izuku still felt he could trust the man, as Jade had confirmed during her short time outside his body, but he hadn't even told his friends that magic was real. Hell, he only told his own freaking mother recently. Wait, I didn't have to tell him magic was real. He didn't ask for proof. Even said he already knew? What the F? Izuku sighs and gives Jade a few more deep scratches before standing and starting with other things that need doing today. Namely, he's due a few plastic replica weapons. By completing the cycle. You can't possibly mean what I think you mean. Yagi thinks towards the vestiges while Recovery Girl is running tests on him. Oh, they mean it. First even manages to speak to him again after making it clear to Tashanori that they mean it. I donated SPRM to help pay for college. It was very uncomfortable for me, being asexual, but the regular payments combined with my part-time jobs got me through college. Didn't think they'd keep or use any of it considering how weak I was from birth, but since they did, I now apparently have a son. How can you even tell? Powers that be visited the vestige realm and showed us a picture. Nana whispers instead of first. Said to be on the lookout for him as a candidate for One for All, since he, in all likelihood, will be the one to fully break the curse of ignorance, and offhandedly mentioned that the ruler of parentage would be remiss to not unite a child with their parent while looking rather pointedly at first. Anyways, we're running out of time quick, Toshi. After hearing his story, even second and third are willing to let the transfer happen. They didn't realize that healers tend to be more brutal than heroes and thought he'd be an in-character healer. Didn't they at all see Recovery Girl? Tashanori wonders wryly as the presence disappears. Well, now he has a confirmed successor for One for All. Now all he needs to figure out is what to do with Mighty Agency and its other companies. Wait, he just got healed. He doesn't need to quit yet. He can feel the vestiges laughing at him lightly as he remembers. As he breathes with both lungs, he leans back in the bed and stares up at the ceiling. But the question is if I want to continue, he thinks. Well, who is he kidding? As soon as his recovery is over, he's probably going to want to start on daily patrols again. Probably for another few years. Probably not for long after that, but it'll give him time to actually properly work towards retirement rather than sputtering out. Maybe he'll switch over to teaching more gradually and give other heroes far more time to pick up the pace. Many don't think he's all that smart or forward planning, but up until All for One suddenly revealed himself and thus killed himself against All Might, Tashanori had his life planned 5 years in advance. Then after he'd recovered, there was that rash of previously quirkless individuals that suddenly gained quirks, of which the month-long trail led Tashanori to All for One's apprentice, who wasn't at all what you'd expect from a maniacal mastermind's adopted son to be like. He was polite, and although his eyes held rage, they mostly held sorrow. Like that of someone who lost a loved one, but wasn't willing to kill over it. Hello, All Might. The man held a snarling, scalding rage, but he's holding it on a leash. I do not wish to fight. I'm just busy performing my father's last wish. And what's that? Take over the world? Tashanori asks, still in a fighting stance. The man rolls his eyes. No, just to return the quirks he stole from the innocent, and give quirks of those that aren't of good repute to the quirkless. And after that? Tashanori asks, still not quite buying it. The man shrugs. Do my best to live a life he'd be proud of. Certainly not the one he'd led. Maybe I'll become an inventor. Maybe even a hero after I get some therapy. He sighs. Another wish he had was to give the bearer of One for All a message. I do not wish to speak to you any more than you wish to speak with me, so let's get this over with. The man sits down, and All Might, still startled, lets his stance drop, but remains standing. You're going to want to sit before this is over, but I can understand not wanting to after I told you I'm the son of the man you hate so much. Speaking of, he's the main point I want to touch on for this little conversation. Basically put, he wants to set straight a bit of One for All's history, so the next user doesn't hate him quite so much as to PSS on his grave. What? The man rolls his eyes, and a golden ring appears around them. This is a rather simple quirk called Zone of Truth. I cannot tell lies within it, but neither can you. Try it out. He tries to say something, but it feels like his vocal cords suddenly freeze as he tries to say, I'm really an elephant, but I just like wearing human skin sometimes. So, the reason the next generation wouldn't hate All for One, well, it starts with a tale of two brothers. He feels the vestiges become confused. The eldest brother, Mugen Shigaraki, had the ability to take and give quirks at will through touch. He always fantasized about villains, their flowing capes, monologues, and fancy attitudes. He explains. The younger brother, Yoichi Shigaraki, was thought quirkless, but is now known to have had the ability to pass his quirk, which is a power stockpiler on its own, down. It then takes the quirk, skills, and personality of the next user and copies it before being passed down again, and again, and again. The first vestige feels shock, horror, and a boatload of sadness. Yoichi always loved heroes, their inspiring speeches, bright attitudes, kindness, and the flowing cape thing seemed to just be something both of them found endearing. Despite that difference, the two still loved each other. The older brother was still a normal person. He went to school, had a life, so on. As did the younger brother. Sure, he was ill a lot of the time, but he still managed to get around his illnesses enough to live a quieter life than his brother. Neither was all that jealous of the other. Neither hated the other. The man continues. But, well, then the quirk wars started, and the world needed a quirked individual to point all their problems at, and the older brother, lover of everything overly dramatic and evil, played the stereotype of a devilish bargainer to a T. All for One rose to infamy. The two brothers, however, had drifted apart because of the wars. Yoichi following a resistance group started by one of his roommates in college against the pre-quirk military, and Mugen donning the mask as All for One basically constantly to keep the world focused on him. Of course, since all lives are tragedy at one point or another. All for One had seen true evil. Not the evil of comic books where people are horrible mostly for, from their points of view, good reason. But the evil of real life. The evil of humans who have no humanity. He decided he would keep that kind of evil in the shadows. Pin it. Keep it stuck and trapped like starved rats in a cage. Which is how he ended up with a flock. He'd forced the truly heinous to cannibalize themselves. Human experimenters were suddenly fed criminals who'd spurned All for One, which was funny talk for, they were so unnervingly disgusting that he threw the body to one of the monkeys. It was to keep the experimenters from going after other people. Your predecessor, Yoichi though, he factors into this story before All for One even wound up with a Nomu. You see, at just before the start of the Quirk Dark Age, the two brothers met again. It was, of course, not a happy meeting, since the resistance group got it in their heads that it was time for peace. The older brother, who had glimpsed the utterly disgusting things the pre-Quirk militia and government had done to Quirk children, essentially argued, no, they will manipulate us into fealty, and a fight broke out. The two brothers had not seen each other for years, but Mugen still found out, with his hand shoved through his brother's chest, that his brother had survived the Quirk War, but wouldn't see the Quirk Dark Age. I will not ask sympathies for what he did next, as even he admitted that it was drastic. But in a rage of grief and sorrow, he activated every amplifier, telepathy, and technopathy quirk he had in possession, and gave one warning. In 1 hour, all nuclear bombs currently existing will explode. Resistance is futile. Run for shelter. The man's voice changes, deepening and filling with unimaginable grief. And thus began the year of the Quirk Dark Age, where most technology in the world was kaput, and humanity lived in a nuclear wasteland. The man sighs. That year gave my father time to recover from grief and make a promise that he would make the next world one that his brother would have loved to live in. Of course, at that point Mugen had no idea who Yoichi was, so until his latest demise at your hand, he's had not a clue what he's been doing. You already know that magic exists, and that my father cursed all but his own blood so they won't be able to reveal that secret. I have the ability to reveal that secret, and I just fully unveiled it for you, but I won't be the one to do it for the world. Why? Tashanori asks, not realizing that he'd sat down. He wants your side to reveal it, simply put. Be the ones to train in it and have its strongest users. The man shrugs. He's certain that someone on your side will discover magic and be able to reveal it to the world. He refused to tell me why. No, why do you have that ability? SPRM donations and the rulers hating abusive parents enough to intervene. The man shrugs, smiling. I have the same ability as my father, but more powerful in that I can copy quirks permanently after a while of holding them, then give the original back while keeping a copy. So, your blood related to him? He asks, and the man nods. Yes. No, before you ask, he wasn't some abusive, obsessive, controlling monster. He was just my dad, and while our way of bonding via him giving me quirks and teaching me to use them certainly wasn't normal, it wasn't evil. You call them rulers? They didn't hate him for what he'd done. The man shrugs. Oh no, they hate him extremely. They just don't care for vengeance. Especially against children of the perpetrator. Sins of the father and all that. Tashanori nods, giving a slight grin. I think I can agree with them on that. The man nods. Good, because I really don't like the idea of killing the guy my father really wanted to stay alive, despite his best efforts. So, what will you do now? Tashanori asks, and the man shrugs. Disappear when I'm done giving the quirks back, probably. I'll still exist for a very long time, obviously, but you won't see me again, and this person will cease to exist. He gestures at his current face. After all, while All for One found the shapeshifting quirks uncomfortable, I find a lot of enjoyment in them. And his flock? Dismantled down to the atoms. He ripped every quirk out of them and passed them on to me before heading to battle. The Nomus are all dead and gone. The doctor that made them is pulverized to ash like father always wanted to do since he met the monkey. Every single long-lasting member of the flock is dead and blowing in the wind. It's over, All Might, the heroes won this war. All Might stares at the man for a while. And that's hardly a good thing. He says, more for the man's benefit than his own. He gets up from the seat and stretches his neck. So, you have a job to do, and so do I. Hopefully we don't have to cross paths again, Mr. Mikumo. Akatani Mikumo. I took my mom's name because I know she despises the fact that I'm related to her. The red-eyed, black-haired man says. And agreed on the idea of never meeting again. Might just move to Canada to avoid you. Live as a moose for a while, see what was so great about terrorizing people. Tashanori hates, just a little, the fact that he laughs at that. Have fun with that then. He buffs up and leaps away, far too much to think about now. Tashanori comes out of his musings on the past and snaps his fingers a little. He knew about Midoria. Who knew about Midoria? Nedu asks, having appeared in the room along with Recovery Girl while Tashanori was musing. I dare say they're, both him and his mother, the most difficult people in the world to keep track of. Tashanori thinks on it for a moment before deciding against telling them. One for all secret. He states. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Nedu just nods, and Recovery Girl gets to work. Izuku hums a little, flying listlessly over the ocean with detection spells activated. He feels his organic detection spell ping off of something meaty and quickly sends out a scan while stopping his flight. Humanoid orca, matches general shape of gang orca but can't be too careful. His body glows lightly as he activates several fight-prepped spells. The glow disperses as the target breaches the water surface and reveals itself to be Gang Orca. "Hi sir, just searching the oceans for any trash for me to recycle. Sorry if I disturbed your swim or patrol," Izuku says, pulling his licenses from his bag and floating down to show the massive hero. The man accepts the licenses and scrutinizes them before pointing in a direction with a grunt. There are a few massive trash piles that way. They're underwater though. He hands Izuku his licenses back. "I can go underwater. Not nearly as deep as you without risks, but as long as they're not below average human tolerances I should be fine." Izuku sends a cone-shaped detection spell that way, and in fact does feel significant plastic concentrations. "Thanks for the tip." He makes a wind tunnel, which he enters, rocketing off in that direction. He arrives at the trashberg quickly enough, and hums, quickly taking a picture before sending various detection spells into the water while picking up surface trash. Looks like a few buildings fell into the ocean a while ago, judging by all the stuff and its decay. Probably a more recent ruin. Ruins from the pre-to-post Quirk War era are sadly quite common to come across while doing ocean cleanup work. Still, worse is when the ruins are actually from recent times. After finishing with the surface cleanup, he dives into the water, activating an air mask spell that'll essentially let him breathe underwater like with a fish's gills, just without actually making him grow a new organ. He looks around and takes a picture of the ruin while at the same time activating a spell to protect his eyes. He gives a small shark a smile and pats it on the nose. He hears a noise and looks towards it to see a very colorful person. Their skin seems to be made of all the colors of coral that exist, their hair is kelp-like, and their eyes seem to glow a volcanic water blue. "What are you doing here, human?" The strange being's voice echoes in Izuku's head. After a moment of staring, Izuku activates a telepathy spell. "Sorry if this feels invasive but I can't speak underwater," Izuku says, figuring it would be a good idea to just finish up this conversation as fast as possible. "I'm cleaning up stuff." He gestures to the plastic and metal all littered about the area. The being seems to grimace. "If there's anything you want me to leave down here I will be happy to, but I figure at least getting the plastic out of here would be good." The being nods. "Leave behind the stone and metals of these ruins, they provide good shelter for certain species." Izuku nods, slightly annoyed that he can't just scrap the whole thing but also not wanting to PSS off whatever this new person-shaped being is. He can tell that they're not human, or if they are human they were heavily mutated, as when he uses a detection spell he doesn't detect blood, veins, meat, or anything like that. "Not curious, human?" they ask as Izuku starts about picking up plastic and putting it away into his bag. "About you? What you are?" he asks telepathically again. The being nods, and Izuku shrugs. "Very, but I have a feeling you wouldn't be permitted to tell me even if I asked." He also has a feeling that they're from the same place as changelings. "No, I would be allowed to. You have the scent of someone who wouldn't tell anyone who would harm us." "Yep, had a feeling." "So, changeling?" The being giggles a little. "No, though they are relatives, as both are residents of the Feywild. I am a being known as a Dryad. I am an oceanic Dryad, born from ancient reefs." The person with the Archdruid, Quirk, was a Dryad, weren't they? He asks after a moment of shock. The Ocean Dryad giggles some more before nodding. "Yes. The Archdruid is a mysterious historical figure that, after the dark ages of the Quirk War, regrew most of nature and somehow brought the animals back as well, before starting the company Dryad's Planty, which is to this day the largest and easiest to access store that sells all kinds of plants and plant materials, whether in bulk or not. They also tend to pay a lot of money to recyclers for cleanup of pre-Quirk ruins and old landfills. Currently Izuku hasn't been to one of those cleanups since they have an age gate, but one of the recyclers he knows said the one he'd been to, a clearing of landfill job, paid enough for him to pay off any debt he previously acquired and move to the countryside. He continues cleaning up the plastic after the shock ebbs away, then has to pause to process several things, like the fact that the Archdruid is still alive and well, but doesn't like doing the whole human thing and just hangs out in forests most of the time. Or the fact that apparently the reason no mushrooms were growing wasn't just because they all got burned up in the Quirk Dark Age, but because a new fungus Dryad needed to grow into existence, and the reason mushrooms came back in recent years is specifically because said Dryad was finally fully grown and went on a tear across the world to regrow all kinds of mushroom populations. Sure, some populations of fungi managed to grow back even in the absence of a Dryad, but said mushrooms also mutated horribly and do all kinds of weird shit that they weren't supposed to originally do. Even some of the plants Izuku is currently getting plastic away from were made by the fungi Dryad, which, he decides, isn't something to care all that much about. Another shark wanders over and he gives it a pat on the head before turning it away. Another human is coming this way. I'm going to hide. Izuku blinks and sends a searching pulse out. It's a hero, probably scared that he sent a kid to a place where sharks are populating the area. He says over the link to the Dryad. The Dryad just gives a note of thanks in their emotions in response. Another shark swims over and Izuku hums, mischief tickling his mind. He strokes the snout of the shark and shivers as he feels the presence of Gang Orca. The shark gives a similar shiver and makes to swim away. Izuku lets it, giving a slightly sad wave. Just before Gang Orca could grab him, he ducks out of the way, a riptide-like effect pulling him through the water. Whoa there Orca, don't sneak up on me. He sends into the man's mind. The man twists around in the water to look at him. Orca? He questions. Izuku shrugs. Saying Gang Orca all the time is a pain and my thoughts don't have as much of a filter as my voice. Anyways, I'm almost finished with this section. Found out from the local animals that removing the stone or metal is a bad idea, so I'm just cleaning away the plastic for them. Why not the stone or metal? He asks, seemingly distracted by Izuku's calm tone. Tried grabbing something, the fish immediately swarmed me since they thought I was going to take away their food. Turns out some of the stone down here works well for growing sea life, but when I went to grab the plastic they seemed a little relieved. He shrugs, deciding to wrap up this part quick. He sends out a sonar and lets his presence loose just enough to make the fish move out of the area he's going to need. Riptides form and drag all the plastic directly to him. Orca stares, then seems to shiver. Geez, kid. Be careful with that. My presence? I try to be, but whatever it is that you want probably can't wait for me to finish hand-picking all of the plastic. That's what you call murderous intent? Just presence? I mean, think about it. I hide my presence from others because I'm no threat to them, but if I want someone to move I make my presence known so they move. My presence just happens to be the size of a cruise liner. I mean the fish no harm, just want them to move so I can do a thing. It's actually around the size of Tokyo, but Izuku decides not to tell Orca that. Instead he goes about storing the plastic. It doesn't feel very comfortable for me to talk underwater, so let's surface. The water around him twists a little and a riptide forms, pulling him directly up at an absurd speed. He blinks as he's flung into the air right in front of a large boat. He starts floating before he can land in the boat and tilts his head. So Orca is collaborating with you, Selkie? He asks the spotted seal mutant. Selkie nods, and someone who looks vaguely familiar and like she could be a sidekick or in turn stares up at him, looking weirded out. Midoria? She questions. Izuku blinks at her. Oh, you said your hero name is Sirius? She nods. Good to see you again. You're a healer, what are you doing in the middle of the ocean? She questions. Izuku shrugs. I'm also a licensed recycler. Was just cleaning up the plastic down there. Need more material for some of my hobbies and some practice with the water parts of my abilities, so I'm doing some ocean cleanup. Water drips into his eye and he remembers that he must still look like a soaked cat. He grasps all of the sea water on his body and tosses it overboard. You two know each other? Selkie asks right as Orca breaches and lands on the deck. Izuku shrugs. I was getting my healer license at her hero license exam. Had to give some rather stern warnings to some of her classmates, who complained until she threatened to kick their heads in. I was about to just throw them out with a tornado but she actually managed to get them to shut up and go away. He changes subjects. Anyways, what's going on? There've been reports of traffickers, smugglers, and that kind of thing in the area. Selkie explained. Need civilians to stay out of the waters until it gets resolved. So things don't get complicated. Izuku hums. Okay. I didn't come across any drags or other contraband, though I wasn't exactly looking. He rubs a rune stamped into his bag, searching it for illegal items. Ah. Okay, apparently I did. He says, reaching into the bag and pulling out an opaque plastic jug. Thought it was empty but because at the end I just searched for plastic and pulled I didn't notice that there's trigger in this thing. He sets it on the deck. As a licensed recycler I come across stuff like this all the time. People love leaving illicit substances in ruins and dumping grounds. He sighs. It gives me a lot of paperwork. Anyways, I'd say you should mark this as a potential drop-off or pick-up point for the smugglers. Don't really know anything about traffickers though. Oh, and here's a copy of my license. Mark down my license number in your paperwork, so the government doesn't go into a frenzy searching for a potentially dangerous recycler and they know where to send the paperwork. He hands a copy of his license off and Selkie nods in thanks. I'm going to dive back down and take a picture real quick, then. I'll be out of here for the day. Take a picture? Orca asks, and Izuku shrugs. The world is full of eccentrics. Recyclers love to take before and after pictures of their cleanups, and they love to see said pictures from other recyclers. He floats back over the edge of the boat and dives down, quickly finding a good angle to snap a picture. He gives a shark a quick pat before springing to the surface again, this time fully dry since he remembered to apply a spell that prevents him from actually getting wet. Anyway, I'll just head home now, unless you have anything I can do to help with the investigation? He questions. The people on the Oki Mariner all shake their heads, so Izuku creates a wind tunnel and gives them a lazy salute as he's vacuumed away. It takes him a while, but eventually he decides to just sit on a building's ledge to send the before and afters. Clean up, clean up. The little trash compactor that could, last ocean ruin for the day. The fish didn't like me moving the rocks that grow their food, so I left the stone and metal of the ruin alone, but I think getting the plastic out still did wonders. Surface before.img, surface after.img. Floor before.img, floor after.img. The little trash compactor that could, also the nickname is getting ridiculous. Thread spinner, why don't you change it then? The little trash compactor that could, because it's not the annoying kind of ridiculous. Thread spinner, Maruko Irol, GIF. He decides against going to the thread where recyclers complain about the smuggling problem Japan has. He's done it before and it's literally just a venting thread, so he likes to save up his frustration before letting out a rant of biblical proportions on that thread. He blinks as a presence appears behind him and a scarf wraps around his body. He sighs and rolls his eyes. Hello again, Eraserhead. What's this, the 5th time you've caught me trying to end my own life? The Erasure hero blinks at him. Oh. Midoria. His scarf uncoils and wraps back to its normal form. You have got to stop sitting on rooftop ledges and sending messages. Izuku shrugs. I like being up high, and you just keep finding me when I'm sending messages. I'll sit on the edge of Tokyo Tower and as soon as I pull my phone out it'd summon you. Eraserhead rolls his eyes, but he doesn't deny it. So, anything interesting happen in the underground since the last time? Couldn't tell ya. The older man responds. Izuku shrugs again. Fair enough. I'll just find out later. Need a healer for anything? He surreptitiously sends out a probe to get an idea of Aizawa's health. Before the man can inevitably say he's fine, Izuku glares at him. Seriously? Izuku asks. Letting yourself get this hurt and still patrolling? I dash. If you try and excuse yourself because you can just go to Recovery Girl, I'm going to hit you exactly where your fractured ankle is. I know lots of people like you, Eraser. I know you won't go to her until you can't patrol any further. Izuku snaps his fingers and a barrier snaps in place around them. Eraser glares at him, activating his quirk. It has no effect. You're lucky I'm not doing a full Phoenix intervention on you. Now stay still. Izuku repairs the man's injuries, all small and easy fixes, but numerous enough to disable a civilian from the pain. If I find you with these kinds of wounds ever again, I'm teleporting you to Recovery Girl's office and letting her deal with you. And we both know she's not nearly as gentle as I am. As it is, I'm sending your agency a notification that I healed you. He states before teleporting away, landing inside the garage at home. He sighs a little happily. Teleportation circles are really useful. He pulls out his enchanted tablet from a drawer and starts writing up that email to Nedu. UA is a hero agency after all. The teleportation circle is a weird form of enchanting that creates a sort of if-then circuit. If a person shapes light and spatial magic together to be exactly like the runic code on the circle, then teleport them straight to the center of the circle. And since he can shape mana invisibly, especially light mana, just using it underfoot creates a brief whooshing sensation before he's inside the garage at home. Plus this way he can create accessories for his mom that do the same thing, just without needing the spacelight mana password, and enchant them so they can't be taken off of her except by her own hand. So he did that basically as soon as she knew magic existed, and taught her how to use the enchantment. I'll just do some prop work today. He mutters, opening his bag and going around the workshop to deposit the materials, reshaping the plastic into cubes as he goes. After that, he grabs his phone again with a hum. Let's see, he whistles a little as he reaches the most expensive commission he's currently being asked for. Real materials? Ancient media source called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Izuku sighs a little, then raises an eyebrow at the reference image. Okay, I can do that. He mutters after seeing the reference images of a weirdly shaped arrow. Luckily there's no runes on it from what he can tell. Some props have ancient runes on them, and while it's not nearly as efficient or precise as Izuku's runes, ancient runes can still create some magical effects. So Izuku has to give a lot more weathering in those areas so a quirk user doesn't accidentally actually summon a lightning bolt using Mjolnir like he did with a plastic toy he made. Granted, the lightning was only an illusion and held no heat or noise. It was just startling because of how bright it was. Need to use aluminum, not steel for the arrowhead, unless he shoots an email at the orderer, questioning how big they wanted the item. Eventually he once again finds himself in a state of boredom, having finished a commission and reached his self-imposed limit, so he draws himself in a hero suit again. Once again the things Katsuki kept telling him ring in his head. Yeah, okay, these designs look good, but do you like them? Would you find enjoyment in wearing them? Izuku somehow always finds the answer is no. Then you need to redo it. Katsuki says simply. Find some clothes and costume styles you like and arrange them in a way that works with your idea of yourself as a hero. So Izuku ends up back at this, only ever sketching something then asking Katsuki since something feels annoying about the design. Is it at all necessary considering he's not going to be going to university for another 2-3 years? No. Does he care? Also. No. He finishes the sketch and still something's off. He likes the design. Loves it, in fact, but it just doesn't fit. He calls up Katsuki again after sending a picture of the sketch. Okay, so do you have a different question for me this time? Katsuki asks, voice bored. Yeah. I love the design, would personally love to wear it, but it seems weird to see it on that. Something seems to perk up in Katsuki's voice. Oh, well maybe try changing things about the model. Izuku blinks and goes to shoot that idea down, but then he remembers his mom's cat tail and ears from her soul image. That kinda makes sense. Thanks. He hangs up the phone and starts working on adding details. He draws a cat tail on it, but something feels off about that tail on his body, so he makes it fluffier, then he adds cat ears, but once again, something felt off so he elongated them a bit. A fox boy? He questions, and something still feels off about that, so he starts slowly adding and subtracting from the model until a fox girl. He stares at the hero suit he'd just drawn. He takes a deep breath and counts down from 10 before closing the book and resting his eyes for a moment. Right. Okay. I need to make sure of something. He gets up from his work desk and takes a short flight to a shopping mall. He buys a hand mirror, then teleports back home after flying up to a rooftop. As soon as he gets home he pulls a mana gem to his hand and starts working on it after rushing up to his room. Let's see. Runes for understanding, self-reflection, and clarity. Rune for investigation. Then the rune for soul. He thinks, carving the runes. His mind is buzzing with so much activity that it might as well be frozen in place. Vibrating so fast it can't be heard. When he finishes carving and creates a place to set the gem into the mirror, everything seems to stop. Do I really want to do this? He questions. It's not like it'll change anything. Annoyingly, it feels like his thoughts developed a mind of their own as his voice echoes back, but then why would I be so scared of doing it? He grimaces and sets the gem into the mirror. He flips it around, and peers inside. She sighs out, tossing the mirror onto her bed and flopping down next to it with a groan. After what feels like a few hours of mind-numbing screaming into her bed, Izuku sits up with a sigh. What the hell do I do? She questions. She's already a semi-public figure. So many heroes know her face. She likes her current identity. But the second someone sees those ears and that tail they're definitely going to assume she's a different person entirely. Pause. Her mind seems to say. Deep breath. She obeys the instructions, then feels a sense of knowing. Her mom would probably know what to do, and certainly wouldn't judge her for anything. She takes another deep breath to stop the shaking of her hands, and lifts the mirror again. She looks into it and smiles at her reflection. I still say ears on top of the head make no goddamn sense with regards to human physiology, but it's cute so whatever I guess. She mutters, voice a little croaky. She quickly heals the damage to her vocal cords and starts writing down notes for the new enchantment she made to keep her mind distracted. Would investigate, soul, and reflection work on a pair of glasses to give it the same spell that I made a while ago? She wonders, writing that question down in a research tome. Or maybe it should be refraction. Diffusion? She scratches her chin a little. She did try making a soul-seeing pair of glasses before, but as it turns out just going investigate and soul just shows the soul in its actual form, which in the case of her mother is a bright ball of purple light that almost blinded her. She pinches the bridge of her nose, mental eyes going over her biology notebook. Right, so it would be refraction, investigate, soul, and understanding. She mutters, noting it down. Wait, since the eyes already do that, I should probably test it with just investigate, soul, and understanding first, then try it with refraction if the first attempt doesn't go right. Refraction enchantments on things like glasses doesn't actually do much on its own. Adding something like understanding or investigation makes the glasses just work better, Then there's crazy sheet as you add further runes, like the ability to just observe the souls of people around you. She rubs her chin a little, looking into the mirror. I need to get a standing mirror with this enchantment. She stands up and shakes off the lingering nerves from her new revelation. A strange determination settling into her bones. You know, I could probably just make a mirror. Make a switch that activates an enchantment for all sorts of stuff. She mutters, smirking a little. And we certainly have the silver for it, but I don't even need to use silver, probably. But then again, Mom might prefer if I used the silver for this, since it's still just sitting in the chest in the living room. It's a little funny how much silver Izuku's found since she started as a recycler. Her mom just finds it absurd though. Technically Izuku could support herself in a larger house than her and her mom currently live in, but both of them still prefer smaller spaces, and Izuku can expand spaces using enchanting, which essentially lets her create new working spaces in boxes. She's still working on the firing range, which is currently a shed in the backyard. So far she's managed to Mina and Ijiro proof it, but Katsuki's quirk is a pain in the butt to keep blocked for long. Plus it's not nearly big enough inside for some of Izuku's spells. She intends on fixing that. She pulls out her tablet and starts looking into how mirrors are made before getting too ahead of herself. After watching and reading a number of videos and articles looking into the process while taking notes, she revises the steps into her how to make everything tome, and decides the whole process isn't worth it when she can just go to the store and buy a mirror, then just make a frame for it. Speaking of frames, she gets a pair of deep green glasses frames as well. My eyes were altered in the reflection. I really hope I don't end up with bad eyesight, but then again I can just enchant a pair of glasses to correct everything. She mutters a little, entirely spaced out as she starts work on the glasses to see soul images. Inko Midoria enters her home through the teleportation circle most days now, and over the course of the summer she's used to coming back to the sound of Izuku crafting, whether because of the classical music blaring through the speakers, or he's using some power tool. Which makes it a weird thing that when she made it home this time there was no noise except the sound of a gentle tapping. She looks in the direction of the sound to see Izuku carving something into a pair of glasses frames. What are you making now? Inko asks, walking over. Izuku jolts and looks at her like a deer caught in headlights before seeming to take a breath. Trying my hand at that whole soul form sight enchantment again. He gestures at a hand mirror set on the work table. I got the reflection version working, so I figure there must be a way to get the enchantment onto a pair of glasses. Inko tilts her head. Wasn't the point of that project to make it so I could wear the glasses and tell you what your soul form looks like? If you can see it yourself, why make the glasses? She asks, not actually minding if Izuku just wants to, but sometimes the boy could get caught up in his own ideas and not actually realize that he'd completed the initial idea. Because I saw my soul form, and I don't think I can use words to tell you exactly what I now know is wrong with my outer body. Inko blinks, then rests her hand on the side of her face, tilting her head a little with worry. Oh, okay. When do you think it'll be done? Izuku shrugs. This prototype should be finished pretty soon. In time for dinner at the latest. Not sure if it'll properly work though. He goes back to carving the socket. Luckily after I finish getting this socket exactly right the most time-consuming part will be over, then I'll just have to create enchanting stones until I get the right runes. For now feel free to check this out. Izuku picks up the mirror and hands it to Inko. Inko looks into it, and sees herself. She looks a lot more youthful though, and has cat ears, but most of all, why am I naked? Izuku shrugs. It reflects your soul. Sadly that also means unless you have a particular outfit you're really truly in love with, it just shows you naked as the day you were born. Can't exactly fix that. Inko hums. Okay. Why can't this show me your soul form? Izuku shrugs. Haven't tested that. Feel free to try, but I'm not sure it'll work. Izuku turns around in his chair and Inko angles the mirror so it's aimed at him. It worked, I think. Inko says, staring at the girl reflected off her son, currently focused on carving out a recess in the frame still, until Inko states that, then she blinks and looks up, the ears on top of her head twisting a little and perking up. So, you're a fox girl, and I'm a cat girl? Inko questions. The girl in the mirror shrugs helplessly, yeah. And? You're okay with this whole thing? Izuku takes a deep breath. I think I am. I don't exactly feel disappointed or annoyed when I look in this mirror, yet I had to go shopping for a hand mirror and a body-sized mirror. She gestures to the side where Inko notices a large mirror currently turned against the wall. So I think that pretty effortlessly depicts my relationship with mirrors in the past. Not to mention the fact that I now have way too many outfit ideas for that face and body of mine, while currently the only decorations I have that I like for my body are a baggy white long coat and my bag. And those are for practicality's sake. The coat's comfortable and the bag's useful. My mind is buzzing with so many ideas that I didn't even realize that the mirror could just be used to look at me through it. So I have a daughter. Inko sets the mirror on the work desk and looks over to see Izuku's face slowly growing very red. A smile on her face and slightly wet eyes. Inko runs her hand through Izuku's hair. Do you want a new name, or are you fine with just being Izuku? I think I'm fine with just being Izuku. She tilts her head a little, then shivers. Wait, no. She shakes her head. Just imagine being called that with that body. EW. Well, there are a few names I thought of back when you were born. Just chose Izuku over the more traditionally masculine name after flipping a coin in my head. Inko shrugs. So, what about Miyako? How is it spelled? Beautiful, knight, and child, in that order. Inko writes it out on the air using an enchanted pen Izuku keeps laying on the counter. It was because of the color of your hair and the fact that the doctors wouldn't let me have my contacts on at the time. It's very hard to remember you're fully colorblind. Izuku says after a moment of staring in confusion. Inko shrugs. The wonders of Quirk tech. Your hair seemed to sparkle between the abyss of black it is and the gray when light hit it. So I thought of the name before the doctors told me you were born with the he's and the hims. Izuku snorts and gives her a flat look. I know logically that you have several extremely detailed drawings of human anatomy entirely memorized, but you are still my daughter and I am vastly uncomfortable with saying those words around you. You literally gave me the most in-depth birds and the bees talk like a month ago. She retorts. School and my own studies into health did not manage to tell me nearly as much about that stuff as you did. Because that was important to be clear on. I did a lot of research into it. Places you wouldn't think to check. Inko sniffs. So, opinion on the name? I like it. She says, shrugging. I think it's good. Inko raises an eyebrow. Okay, but would you like to be called Miyako from here on, or no? I completely forgot where we were supposed to be taking this conversation for a second. Her face reddens again after a moment of thought, a small smile spreading on her face. Yeah. I like it a lot better than Izuku. Good, because otherwise I was going to have to pull up a baby names website. I'm honestly not all that sure how I came up with any of the 3 names I did. Probably something in the drags they gave me. Miyako snorts, then pouts a little at the pair of glasses now settled on the workbench. Guess I don't need to work on these. Though I'll still need a pair of glasses, just in case my eyesight worsens with the ritual. Oh yeah, I guess your eyes were mutated to look like a fox's. Maybe you'll be a little colorblind too. Inko snarks. Miyako shrugs. If I am, I'll just enchant a pair of glasses to correct it like I already plan on doing with these glasses. And how are you going to get them to stay on your face? Inko asks, amused. Oh, I actually already thought of that, and suddenly Miyako enters a mutterstorm of biblical proportions. Inko listens while also tilting her head to the side a little. Something's different about this mutterstorm. After a moment, she realizes why that is, and it makes her both a little happy and a little sad at the same time. Miyako is smiling. She's excited and emitting a bouncy energy that Inko hadn't seen from her since she was 10. Jade, who Inko hadn't realized was out and laying on the ground right next to Miyako, turns her head and rests it in her contractor's lap, chuffing a little to pull the girl out of a mutterstorm. And you wondered why I was a girl. Inko blinks, and quickly puts together that the animal's gender after the ritual would likely be the same as the contractor's. Okay, I know for a fact that you went on a deep dive into each of the communities your friends fall into, and Katsuki falls hard into this one. Why the hell did you not realize this sooner? Miyako shrugs. Felt scary. Decided not to dwell on it. And now? Like I said. Made the mirror, and seeing my very naked reflection showing assets I don't currently have made me realize that I deeply want it. And my previous scared reaction actually felt a bit more like nervously excited now that I look back on it. But since you couldn't tie the emotion immediately to anything, it just felt like you were scared and thus you stopped thinking about it. Miyako nods. Exactly. Note that down as something to talk to your therapist about. Inko says, and tell me before you decide to do the ritual to change. I want to be there. Miyako nods again, then seems to think for a moment before pulling out a tome she has on rituals. Well, there's not really any requirements for the ritual, it just requires a complex circle drawn in chalk and a quick chant, which seems a bit like a prayer to someone. Who it is really hard to tell since the name in the text isn't in anything I can find. Really? Miyako shrugs and copies the page onto some paper she had stowed in a drawer on her desk, showing her notes to Inko. A lot of jargon that Inko actually learned because paying attention to Miyako's interests was one of the things parenting books called really important greets her. So it's basically a ritual to grant you understanding, given the investigation sigil, grant you new form, given the shapeshifter sigil, grant you truest self, given the free expression sigil, and since the central sigil is sunrise, aka new life, it'll act as a rebirth for your body. She's not quite ever going to be confident enough to pretend to fully understand this stuff, but she'll certainly try and learn what she can. Miyako nods and stretches her back a little. Well, I'm not sure when I'm going to do this. Funnily enough, the ritual requires a mirror, a full-body one that has no current magical effects tied to it, so I could just do it right now. What's stopping you? Inko asks, knowing the lightly pinched look on Miyako's face means she knows but doesn't want to say it. I want to make sure and plan for the government bullshit. Miyako shrugs. But I'm also fixated on these mirrors and the enchantment I made for them. Ah, that's actually pretty easy. You said before that your quirk wants you to do this ritual to acquire more rituals, right? Inko asks, and Miyako nods. Then it falls under Quirk Altered Physicality X. Essentially you're able to get all sorts of government stuff redone because your quirk heavily mutated your body, even this late into training it. Miyako stares for a moment, then pulls out her phone and rapidly searches things up. When she finally sets her phone down, she looks at her mother with a sheepish expression. I'd still like to get some time to sleep on it. Inko nods. Okay, that's perfectly fine, sweetie. Take a breather. Maybe even talk to Katsuki about it. Miyako nods. That's a good idea, actually. Inko nods a little and stands up straight. I'm gonna go make dinner, don't get too absorbed in making stuff, okay? Miyako smiles and hugs Inko, which makes her blink since Miyako hadn't wanted to hug anyone in ages. Still, Inko returns the hug before Miyako breaks it and they both get to work. Katsuki blinks as Izuku walks up to him. Hey, he says, seeming a bit tired, or maybe anxious. What's up? Katsuki responds. Izuku had randomly called Katsuki up today, when normally the naturally introverted boy would disappear throughout summer, only peppering in appearances on the news as a healer or being dragged out of his house by one of the friend group. Let's go to a cafe or something, Izuku mutters. So that's where they go, a quaint cafe with a common era style. They settle into a booth and Izuku hums briefly before ordering something that sounds so sugary it'd give Katsuki a stomach ache. Then again Katsuki orders a water and some extremely spicy chips, so he guesses they're even. When the waitstaff walks off, Izuku grabs a paper from his bag and slaps it on the table. Katsuki blinks at the drawing of. Is that you? He asks. Yep. Izuku shrugs. It's my hero costume sketch. I was confused as to why it didn't work until I added the cat features, then that felt better, but not quite right, so I continued shaping the ears and tail until they were more fox-like. And the body? Katsuki asks. Izuku sighs. That's what really made me not want to message you. She flicks a hand, probably doing something with her quirk. Mostly because I got absorbed in figuring out why this was. Turns out, that ritual that makes me adopt my soul form that I told you about? It'll probably turn me into that. I plan on doing the ritual and saying nothing about it until the school year starts back up. I know you'd hate to be left out of the fun, so that's why I'm telling you ahead of time. And, you're okay with it? Okay? I'm FING excited. Izuku says, grinning a little. I like it so much I can hardly keep myself from bouncing around. Oh. Katsuki blinks. There were no. He seems to reboot after a moment, thinking deeper. You were entirely normal, which I guess should have been a warning sign. He mutters. Oi, what's that supposed to mean? Izuku asks, a bit incensed. Katsuki sighs. You gotta admit, you're extremely eccentric, yet you acted like you have a normal emotional spectrum, even a bit muted. You don't get extremely excited or happy. You were always kinda muted. Like, think about it, everyone in our class has some emotion that they go extreme for. Mina's excitement, Ijiro's happiness, and your competitive streak. Izuku nods. I noticed, but I didn't really care to emulate that feature since it got you three into trouble more often than not. We've never gotten into trouble though? Attention is troublesome. Izuku points out. And there's another sign. I never ever wanted to draw attention to myself when I thought I was a girl. But now, it's whatever. Sheet, you're right. I'd love attention if I had the body I saw. Neurotic about touch? Katsuki questions. Izuku shivers. I hugged my mom last night and it surprised her. Another point. Katsuki shrugs. Sorry for not noticing. Not your fault. It's not like I hung out with everyone much. Katsuki winces. Yeah, that's another point if you think about it a certain way. Izuku shrugs and waves a hand, likely dissipating whatever it is she did earlier. So what's your name? You get to find that one out with the others. Izuku grins. It's nothing impressive, but I'd at least like to have that part remain a secret. Plus this way you don't have to worry about accidentally revealing it. Oh, and if the others ask why I'm not very chatty online, tell them I'm working on a long-form project. It's technically true since I'm going to be working on my healer stuff and my wardrobe for the remainder of the summer. Here's your order. The waiter says, setting down their snacks. Izuku smiles and thanks them, and quickly puts away the drawing. The teens spend the next couple of hours talking about less impactful things before leaving to go about the rest of their day separately. So, let me get this straight, you say the chant, and after that's finished, the mirror becomes a portal of sorts for a short time, at which point you will enter the mirror, and, what? Inko questions after reaching the part of the notes where everything gets truly archaic. Miyako shrugs. The language gets a bit funky, but it essentially means commune with spirits and potentially strike a deal. Are you sure you want to go ahead with this? We can afford to get someone to change your gender, Inko asks, setting aside the notes and wringing her hands. Yeah, but is the government nonsense going to be as easy as this? Miyako questions. No, Inko says, but we could get it done. Miyako sighs. I'd rather not go through the stress. She twists a hand through the air and a full sigil outline appears around the mirror she'd already set in the center of the garage. Miyako picks up a piece of chalk and starts tracing the circle with a critical eye and careful hand. After finishing the chant, she slowly steps through the mirror. The feeling is odd, like what Miyako would assume stepping into a soap bubble without it popping would feel like. It doesn't take long before blue flames burst in front of her and a person appears, eyeing her up and down. The person has bright orange hair that seems to flicker lightly, like fire. Their eyes do the same thing. So, you wish to shed this form and gain the form of your true self? The person questions, pulling out a mirror and directing it at Miyako. It shows her soul form. Well, that's easy enough. I'll even handle the government stuff for you, but it'd be a shame if your current form never got to see the world again, so let's make a deal. Miyako nods her head, signaling them to continue. I will take your current form, and be allowed to use it when and where I feel it necessary, but nobody will connect me to you or vice versa. In return, as you are one of my creations in soul, I will grant you the powers that you would normally have. To do with as you see fit. How, your creations, who are you? Miyako's mind overloads slightly, but she feels that ebb away as the person shrugs. I am Loki, the ruler of mischief, shapeshifters, fire, hunting, travels, family, teaching. I have a few other titles, but those are the ones important to you. Apologies for not introducing myself sooner. I hadn't realized you were from Earth and not Gaia. They give a light bow. Gaia? Not very important to our current conversation, Midoria, but I shall have one of my agents deliver you a book on the subject. My changelings really appreciate your help in Japan. Miyako nods idly. I have your word that you will not use my form to potentially criminalize me? Loki nods. Nobody will even know that form was you at one point. They'll still know you were a boy and human, but putting that face to it will be difficult. She has a feeling, deep in her gut, that the ruler is telling the truth. Okay. I accept then. Loki smiles, then grimaces a little. This is going to hurt. A lot. I'm sorry. Take a deep breath. Miyako does as asked, and bursts into flames that really hurt. She passes out, and wakes up back home, laying on the floor, on her very bare chest. She pushes up from the ground. A little warning about the amount of pain that would put me in would have been nice, teacher. She grumbles, stretching out her back and smiling a little as her tail twitches. Are you okay? Her mom asks, and she hums a bit before grinning. Never better, actually. It hurt really badly for a few seconds, but now it feels like I just got a really good massage. Still, I'm super tired, so I'm gonna go up to my room and pass out now. Your eyes okay? Inko questions, and Miyako tilts her head a little. Yeah, I think they are. I can see a bit easier, actually. Still gonna keep the glasses though. Might program them so I don't have to actively use magic to see injuries or something. Oh, also the spirit I ended up making a deal with was Loki. They've essentially traded me my old appearance for the actual powers a kitsune would have naturally. They also said they'd handle all the legal stuff, though I'm not quite sure how. She looks down at herself, and feels a blush creep up her cheeks as she stares, touching a hand to her arm. Soft. Very soft. She pinches her arm. Ow, not a dream. Though that's odd. My sense of pain dulled, just a little though. She continues to stare down at herself for a while, until her mom clears her throat and she's pulled from her thoughts. She clears her throat awkwardly. So, I'm going to get to work on making an outfit that works for this body tomorrow, then go out and get some normal clothes. She says, then starts rushing out of the room. Her mom just snorts and rather snarkily calls after her, remember to mute your room and send Jade out before trying any of your new equipment. Miyako blinks for a moment, not understanding, until she realizes and turns red up to her ears. "Mom!" she shrieks, rushing faster. Luckily she's already a side sleeper, so it's not like she was forced to get used to a new way of laying down in her bed since her tail would get in the way, though she finds herself strangely a lot more comfortable sleeping NDE than she did previously. Her tail curls around her body as she tries to sleep, which is when she gets a good look at it. The fur is mainly black with a sheen of green. She touches it. Bouncy. She muses, brushing her hand along it a little. Also oddly sensitive to moving touch, but not compression? Odd, but nice. She pulls her phone over to her bed and sets a timer for an hour before moving it so it'll sit on her desk and making it full volume. When she's woken up from a good dream by the alarm, she wants to wreck her phone, but finds enough restraint within herself to just turn off the alarm and get up. She stands and stretches her back, her tail does a weird curling and uncurling motion on instinct, almost breaking her concentration on her stretches before she realizes that it's just her tail stretching itself. She lets out that noise as she finishes the stretch and looks around her room, remembering Loki mentioning they'd send books her way. As expected, she finds 3 books with weird lettering in their titles that were not previously on her shelves, since she keeps all of the Changeling Books on a secret shelf behind a decorative panel on the normal bookshelves. She gathers them up with a quick spell and reads the titles. The Separation, A History, The Quick Guide to Gaia, and The Abilities and Origin of the Kitsune. Looks like I have some stuff to read during my breaks. The best part about getting these books from the changelings is that only she can read them, which means she can read them in public, and while she'll get a few weird looks, nobody will be able to spy over her shoulder. She walks downstairs after quickly putting on a pair of her boxers, a pair of very unfitting shorts, and a sweater that's like a tent on her now. She sniffs at the air, smelling a very good scent. Food. She grumbles as she gets into the kitchen to see what Mom's cooking. Inko briefly looks at her and gives a light smile. "It'll be done in a minute, sweetie." Miyako nods a little and grabs some orange juice from the fridge to tide her over until the food's done. Need to do some research before I can start working on my clothes anyway. She waves a hand and pulls her tablet to her and starts said research with underwear, because boxers are distinctly uncomfortable. After a while, her mom asks her to set the table, so she does, using a bit of telekinesis while still fixated on her tablet. "Alright, no tech at the table until you're done eating and washed your hands," Inko says, setting the food down in front of her. Miyako nods and sends the tablet back to its place on top of her desk using a rune on the tablet case. After a quick lapse of silence while they both ate to sate a little bit of hunger, Inko questions. "So what were you so fixated on?" "Oh, women's underwear is weird," Miyako says, shrugging. "I'm trying to understand it, but making it is so far seeming to be a challenge. Especially bras, those seem like they'll be really hit or miss with how I make them." "Ugh, yeah." Inko nods. "Trust me, there will be very few you will like, and the 1 or 2 you do will be used until they break or you grow out of them." The pair end up talking about underwear for the rest of dinner, somehow finding it to be a fairly innocuous conversation despite Miyako having pretty severe embarrassment before when she'd helped her mom with her laundry. Probably because of the extremely repressed impulsive thought to put it on, but Miyako would really rather not delve into that part of her mind lest she bash her brains out over the fact that she didn't even write that thought down yet it's still been memorized, so her brain has embarrassment material. After an hour of extra time awake spent sketching an idea for a basic outfit for her to make, Miyako goes to sleep so easily she feels the need to write down that she had such an easy time in her morning journal entry. Before breakfast, Inko tosses a folder at the table in front of Miyako. "Went through all your legal stuff before I started making food. Every single thing about your change was somehow filed a week ago. I even found your new licenses and ID in the mailbox. Your school even has the change in their registry." Miyako blinks and opens the folder, finding copies of all of her official documents with her new name and gender on all of them. "They were thorough," she mutters, spotting that her new ID has her quirk marked as mutation as well as its previous creation, emitter, and transformation markings. "I've collected them all," she says with a laugh. The pair eat breakfast pretty quickly, and Inko gets up with a sense of finality. "I have work today, so try not to burn the house down, okay?" Inko asks, smiling slightly and signaling that she's joking. Miyako gives her a bland look. "I only promise to try." They both laugh a little. "Aha. Love you, sweetie." Mom hugs her and Miyako returns it. "Love you too." Mom leaves and Miyako locks the door behind her. Now what?" She thinks aloud. "I need to make myself something I feel comfortable wearing outside, then if it's still daytime I'll go shopping." "Jade? You want to go explore outside while I work?" She questions, and the tattoo of a wolf on her back bursts, Jade forming outside and tilting her head a little. Not really. I'm fine with just lazing around the workshop for today. Jade says after a few moments. Miyako nods and starts towards the garage, retrieving her messenger bag and healer gear so she might resize them in case it gets too dark to go out before she finishes the clothes. Considering it's summer, she doubts it'll come to that, but she'll still need to do that soon anyway. Eventually, during a break, Miyako pulls one of the books, the one that's most important for her to read right now. The Abilities and Origin of the Kitsune. The first section is actually on the origin of the Kitsune. Essentially, shrines, monasteries, and other religious sites were very closed off and hard to get to, as they still are in many places. The Kitsune were made by Loki as the ruler of travels for the purpose of bringing and sending messages to and from these places, initially. Messengers of the rulers, and of the devout. After the separation, there wasn't much need for the Kitsune on the magic side of things. Seeing as there weren't many religious sites and the people were building the new sites in much more reasonable places. So, Loki, being the ruler of mischief, decided the Kitsune wouldn't be forced to leave Earth, and in fact would be allowed to move between the worlds using the same ability they used to travel between shrines to travel between worlds. Their job on Earth? To create and sow mischief, and hunt monsters if monsters appear on Earth. They're also automatically marked as trusted by Loki's agents to not abandon an abused child, because their instincts would not allow it. Though, of course, that was if the Kitsune was still non-sapient. If they're sapient, then Loki generally didn't care either way about what a Kitsune decided to do with their life. Go live on Gaia, live on Earth. The powers a Kitsune has will stick around as long as they don't upset the ruler of order. Miyako feels it's a bit weird that upsetting the ruler of order would make Loki take away her powers as a Kitsune, but she shrugs it off, seeing as she doesn't plan on getting on the wrong side of any of the rulers, and continues reading. It seems that last tidbit was the end of the description of the origins, instead leading into a compendium of the powers of a Kitsune. Miyako sorts it like so. Spirit Gate user. The Kitsune are able to use various shrines, markers, and gateways as sort of fast travel points. There are a few points that lead directly to other points, but otherwise the Kitsune generally needs to have visited a point in the real world to be able to travel to it via Spirit Gate. Pathfinder. Let's say you give a Kitsune a destination, whether it be a physical place or a person. The Kitsune is able to, if they wish, see an illusory version of themselves traveling the shortest route to the destination only using their powers from being a Kitsune and no other magic. Fey Fire, a form of fire magic specifically granted to Fey created by or aligned with Loki, the ruler of fire. Creates a neon cyan-colored flame that can both heal and destroy. The fire uses up far less mana than normal magic to perform all of its functions. Multiformed, the Kitsune have 4 forms by default. Human, a form most Kitsune use to hide in plain sight on Earth. Default, just fox ears, eyes, and a tail on a human body. Fox, the Kitsune's fully fox form, and finally, Hunter, the form granted when Kitsune were assigned as Earth's monster hunters in the absence of magically inclined humans and other races. Claws, just as stated. A Kitsune's finger and toenails are harder and sharper than normal. When in hunter form, the claws extend and sharpen further. Senses, Kitsunes have heightened hearing and smelling senses when compared to humans. They can also sniff and hear different things and instinctively tell what they are if the things are important to their role as messengers, tricksters, and monster hunters. And that's all it describes for her new abilities, so Miyako notes everything down with a hum. I wonder if I can find a gate between Earth and Gaia? She thinks aloud, writing down several other questions she has, even if they could easily be answered by the other books. She's not reading those until she has the energy to read a history book. That kinda energy is always hard to muster considering how much conjecture is normally inside those books and thus how useless they tend to be for increasing her mana stores. Her break timer goes off and she hums. Right, still gotta finish the leggings. She says, snapping her fingers as she recalls what she was doing before. It's about a week before summer break ends that Mina Ashido blinks as one of her group chats goes off. She pulls out her phone to see it's her bestie's group chat. Future heroes. The Green Healer, you. The Green Healer, my mother is nagging me to hang out with you all at some point before summer ends. Today work for everyone? Alien Queen, I'm down. Ground Zero, same. Red Riot, yee. The Green Healer, great. Oh, and I have a hero name in mind now. 3C. The Green Healer changed their nickname to Inari. Inari, meet up outside the train station near school? Ground Zero, sure. Mina blinks, and slowly puts her phone away so she can walk towards the station. Midori never really had any ideas towards his hero name before, it's why his nickname in the group chat was just the Green Healer. The heck happened? Soon enough she arrives at the usual spot they tend to meet up at to see that only Eiji and Kat had arrived so far. Really? First he has a hero name, now he's the last to show up? When he's normally the first? Mina questions. Eiji shrugs. Kat has an inkling but decided that Izuku would be the one to explain. A girl with black hair that seems to sparkle green when light hits it materializes from the crowd entering and exiting the station. Izuku won't be explaining anything, she says, placing a hand on her hip after coming to a stop. Mina stares at the girl for a few moments. Freckles in the shape of perfect diamonds, black hair with green highlights, and even the same accent that Izuku had. Okay, so what's your name now? Mina asks. Midori shrugs. Miyako. It's official and everything. Sorry I'm a bit late, I didn't want to get stopped by the heroes on the way here and with the new face and all they won't recognize me nearly as well, so I decided against flying. Katsuki just chuckles a little and rolls his eyes, and Eiji, whose confused look had progressively gotten worse, seems to suddenly understand what's going on. He says, sounding quiet and calm despite everyone present knowing he's deeply confused. It's a girl, surprise, nerds. Miyako says, voice entirely monotone as she addresses the issue. She does jazz hands and Mina's eyes follow the gesture, her eyes trailing over Miyako's body a bit. She's wearing a sleeveless shirt with a dark green fox emblem on it, a green plaid flannel over that. The same material being used for her skirt. She wears a pair of black leggings under the skirt. Honestly the only thing that remained the same are her shoes and even those are smaller than Mina remembers. Little tip, Mina starts. The flannel and skirt material being the same makes it seem a bit odd. I'd lose the flannel. Ah, that's what it was. I thought something was off about it. She mutters, thinking for a moment before taking off the flannel and putting it in her messenger bag, which now that Mina looks at it, has definitely been resized to suit Miyako's new stature. She's quite a bit shorter, granted she was tall as heck before, and she's still standing at Mina's height, but that's still an around 20 centimeter difference. Her eyes are fox-like, which is to say they have changed almost entirely to seem sharper and a little less kind than they did before, though the ears and fox tail negate the uncute factor by quite a bit. The ears coming out of the top of her head keep twitching and twisting to listen to their surroundings while her tail is so fluffy Mina would probably die happy if she was allowed to touch it. It's so long it's close to touching the floor but it curls up just barely before it can do that. As she talks, Mina also notices that Miyako's teeth had changed, seeming sharper. As she gestures, Mina realizes the other girl's nails had also developed a sharpness. And as Mina watches Miyako speak with a bouncy, energetic smile on her face, she has to remind herself that Miyako just became a girl, so hitting on her is off limits. This just in, as is the usual, Mina Ashido has become a goddamn disaster for one of her friends. She thinks sarcastically at herself. So what even are you now? Eijiro asks, and Mina smacks him on the shoulder for the rude phrasing. Miyako grins, I'm a kitsune. It's actually really interesting, but I'd rather not talk about all of that today. According to Mom I'm supposed to take a break from all things work or training related unless I'm specifically called on for healer duty. Hope you realize I'm not going clothes shopping with you, Katsuki says. Miyako rolls her eyes. Yeah, I would have just asked Mina if I wanted to do that. Kiri wears some things that I wouldn't have worn before I cared about how I look and you're a dude. I'm a dude too. Eiji wonders. Yeah but you're a fashion disaster even for a dude. Miyako jabs. Eiji holds a hand over his chest in mock hurt. I'm just out for a break, honestly. Been a while since we all met up and I wanted to let you all know about this, since I'd probably be full of anxiety if I had to deal with both your reactions and the reactions of the rest of class when we go back to school. Eiji seems to immediately recover. Great. There's a parkour course me and Kat ran across. It's got some fun equipment, but it's not all that helpful for training. Midori, who normally seems to hate the idea of exercise as a break from her normal study craftwork repeat sessions, grins and starts walking. Sounds fun, actually. Let's go. Wait, really? Eiji asks, stumbling to follow while both Mina and Katsuki just start walking after her. Miyako snorts. Foxes are dogs on cat software. I could use the exercise to get some of that musconium energy out. You get the zoom eyes? Mina asks, blinking in surprise. Miyako sighs. Like you would not believe. And it is the worst, let me tell ya, when you can fly and get the zoom eyes. I was in international waters before I even realized I had left Japan. The go fast also gave me so much dopamine that I felt like I had breathed for the first time in years despite getting that feeling literally the day my quirk did this to me. She gestures to her body when she says this. It didn't even work to get rid of the feeling of needing to run around. Just gave me a lot of dopamine. I need to actually exercise my legs every day now or I get restless and the new instinct acts up. Haven't done it today since I figured you'd probably recommend some kind of gym or exercise thing. Mina rubs her cheek a little in thought, not about that particular statement, but of if what Miyako is adds up. Honestly, Mina always thought Midori seemed subdued. Not necessarily closed off or standoffish, just quiet. Like he had a permanent sepia filter on his emotions. This Midori seems vibrant, loud, and excited. Of course, Mina is no idiot. She remembers what Katsuki was like before as well, and honestly it lines up nearly perfectly if not for the lack of aggressiveness from Midori of before. Of course, there's the sarcastic streak that she used against Eiji moments ago, not to mention the fact that her mom still had to nag her into actually contacting her friends because she's such a socially anxious mess that she couldn't. The atmosphere she gives off is more existent. Like she wasn't just kinda floating along and doing whatever she felt would benefit the people around her or just further her quirk fuckery. How are you feeling? Katsuki asks Miyako after a moment, making Mina tune back into the conversation at hand. The fox girl shrugs and gives a half grin. Confused as f-. She answers. Only figured this out, what? A week ago? And I was hit with such yearning for this body that I immediately did what I had to get it. Now I'm still dealing with new realizations. None that you want to hear about though. She says, cheeks turning a little red. Oh, Mina certainly does, but she's not going to press it when Midori still looks so embarrassed by it. On yet another random day during the same summer, Miyako decides to harvest some wood from fallen or rotting trees in a nearby forest. Miyako jumps as a voice suddenly shouts from the trees. Oh, thank Titania. The voice is girlish, and sounds greatly relieved. I don't have to do a stupid ritual now. Miyako looks over and squints at the being. What's going on? Monster, really bad, really scary. Follow me? The girl is roughly shaped like a mushroom, wearing a dress that looks like a red and white mushroom, hair cut in a brown bob that makes her head look slightly like a mushroom, and when one of her eyes shows through, Miyako sees that her pupil is shaped like the top of a shiitake. She doesn't have any shoes on. You're a Dryad, aren't you? Miyako asks, then shakes herself a little as the girl seems scared that she just told an Earthborn about monsters. Tell me about the monster. There's a monster that way, it's a wyvern. The Dryad points. Miyako huffs and transforms into a fox as her Pathfinder ability activates. She begins following her projection. As she finds the wyvern, she realizes just what kinda nonsense she signed up for with this. The wyvern is massive, probably over 10 meters long, but it seems clumsy as it tries to hit Miyako while she circles it in fox form. Wow, Shroom Girl wasn't lying when she said scary. Though, I'm probably still scarier. As she gets back around to the wyvern's face, she abruptly transforms back into default mode and blocks a fire breath attack with a wall of wind, blasting the fire straight up at the sky. She then summons a storm, the clouds above turning green as rain pours down on their battlefield. The wyvern doesn't seem to care and continues to try and eat the kitsune. Head surging forwards to bite at her, Miyako smiles a little. Enough water had collected in the mud. A humming, glowing green blade of water springs up from the ground and slices the wyvern's head clean off. That done, Miyako breathes for a moment, dismissing the storm and drying herself off with a spell. The girl from before suddenly appears out of a nearby mushroom, seeming to materialize in a flash of red. She looks at the wyvern and breathes a sigh of relief. A bit flashy, but I'd be willing to guess you're new? The girl asks. To helping supernatural beings on Earth? No. I'm from here originally but I know about magic. I am new to monster hunting though. Mushroom Girl nods. Well, I'm Kanoko, currently the only Dryad of fungi on Earth. The girl introduces herself. It'll take a few hundred years for another one of me to be born, unless another evil dragon pops up and Ignis decides to take it out. I was just doing some maintenance in this part of the world and that wyvern popped in and tried to burn me. From what I've seen, most Dryads are very able to fend for themselves. Kanoko shrugs. I'm not very good at fighting and the wyvern was very scary. Okay. Miyako replies, shrugging as the other girl seems surprised at her accepting the response. I wasn't really looking for a long explanation for why. Just a bit to sate my curiosity. What do you want to do with the body? Can I grow mushrooms on it? The residual magic in the hide and blood would create interesting fungi. You can keep its mana stone though. Fungi can't do anything with it. Miyako shrugs. Yeah, I'll take it. Kanoko walks over to the corpse and strange white tendrils seem to slither out of her hand, effortlessly piercing into the skin of the wyvern and opening a hole. She reaches inside the hole and pulls out a glowing blue crystal, which she promptly tosses at Miyako, who catches it. The kitsune watches in fascination as the wyvern's body starts growing hundreds of different mushrooms. Webs of mycelium covering the wyvern in seconds, then various mushrooms sprouting out from there. That is really cool, actually. Miyako mutters, and Kinoko blinks. Oh, thank you, she says, smiling a little. Anyway, you should probably get out of here. Unless you want to hunt down more monsters around here and let me rot them, because I would totally be down. Miyako shakes her head. Like you said, my way of fighting's a bit too flashy for this kind of thing right now. You have a way to contact you though? Just tap the top of any mushroom out there and I'll take it as a call, and if I'm available I'll appear. Oh, and can you take care of the head? Kinoko points to the head of the wyvern, still untouched. I don't like putting my mushrooms anywhere near brains, since it gets a bit freaky. One of mine just took over a snail's mind and piloted it. She shivers a little. It freaked both me and the druid I took to look at it out. So I've come to the conclusion that I just shouldn't let my fungi near that stuff. Sure. Miyako says after giving her a weird look. Bit odd that an ancient and sentient fungus wouldn't want that sort of thing to happen, but I guess the operating word in this case is sentient. Miyako muses before touching a hand to the head and sending a pulse of various detection magics into it. DMN, this thing really could be very useful for me. She muses, feeling how saturated with magic everything is. Really need to make something that'll let me do some monster hunting. Would my Pathfinder let me just? I want to find the nearest living monster. A projection of her turns into a fox and runs off in a different direction as she uses Pathfinder with that thought. She smirks a little, but focuses back on the task at hand. Right, let's see here, she thinks, kneeling down and holding a ball of fey fire to its spine. Burn away all neurons to ash. The fire flares, and seems to reach inside the spine, flowing into the spinal cord and following it like a fuse. This should burn away its brain and other neurons. Miyako says. I don't have anything that can store a head this big on me. Technically the messenger could, but it'd get blood all over everything if I stored it in there. She thinks privately. Kinoko looks up from where she's gleefully picking up pieces of mushrooms that are growing on the wyvern and tilts her head. Oh, really? Well thanks then. Glowing blue veins appear on the wyvern's face briefly along with its eyes flashing the same color, then Miyako feels the spell fizzle out, no longer detecting any wyvern neurons. Okay, should be safe now. Kinoko reaches a hand forwards, and once again white tendrils that Miyako now understands to be Kinoko's own mycelia reach out from the mushroom girl's wrist and hand, then as soon as the filaments touch the wyvern they start spreading and growing all over. Now you should probably head out. Kinoko says, I'll let some of Loki's agents know you helped me out. They'll figure out an appropriate payment for you. Honestly right now I'd really like to know where I'd be able to hunt more monsters. This wyvern's materials seem like they'd be useful in my research, but I don't want to take anything away from anyone or step on any toes. Plus something in Miyako's instincts is stirring at hunting this monster. It's very very satisfying. I'll be sure to tell them that. Kinoko replies. They'll probably get you an info packet. Miyako nods to the short mushroom girl. Well, I'll see you around. She transforms back into a fox and slinks off, finding her way back to a road and returning to her default form. It's actually the first day of school after summer break ends when Miyako gets called in for an incident. Her reintroduction to the class went through without any real trouble. A few of the girls commented on how cute she looks now and she grinned at the praise of her looks, which confused most of her classmates since she hadn't responded well to that kind of praise before. She's sitting in first PRD, listening to the teacher, when her phone goes off. She pulls it out and her mouth pinches, sighing she looks to the teacher and pulls out her license, waving it in the air before silently leaving. The teacher just gives her a subtle nod. Right, well, time for some trickery. She thinks, smirking a little as she takes to the sky and starts putting on her resized gear. She also pulls on her new mask, essentially a cute kitsune mask, just missing the ears and colored black and green rather than white and red. Right, let's review the incident while I fly. Earthquake caused by villain fight. Dozens already injured, she grimaces as she reads through the report. Villains still at large. Great. There's a loud thump as she starts accelerating. She pulls out her resized staff, which she decided to turn into a cane because the aesthetic she's going for no longer really works with tall staves. She looks towards where Pathfinder's instincts are guiding her even without the projection, and twists in the air, aiming herself at the recovery zone while cranking her speed back down. She lands in the zone and walks to the center before slamming her cane down, the enchantment activating to instantly create a perfect recovery zone. Verdante, here to help. She shouts. A few healers look at her in confusion, but as soon as they see her coat, which she kept the same even after resizing it, they all seem to conclude, okay, sure. And go back to their jobs. Ghoul walks up to her. What's the damage looking like? Not good. Miyako responds after giving the patients currently inside the recovery zone a scan with her triage spells. I'll play protector if the villains pop back up, but I actually have to focus to heal a lot of these people. Suddenly a wall of muscle blurs into existence in front of her and she blinks up at All Might, who's laying a couple more victims into cots. Hurt ribs and head. Hurt legs. He says, then blurs out of existence again. She triages the new patients and sends a quick heal at them, seeing that they aren't too badly hurt. She walks through the bubble and taps other patients that don't need intense healing, casting a quick healing spell through them. Then she goes to the more severe patients and begins using the healing spells that require more focus to cast. After a grueling 5 hours, the incident is over, all recoverable civvies are out of the sight, and All Might had apprehended the villain at some point while rescuing some civvies. These sights are always the worst. Miyako mutters to Ghoul, who gives a solemn nod. Luckily your new mask worked wonders to keep the kiddos calm. Ghoul says, maybe I should get something like that. Miyako smiles a little and moves the mask to the side, letting it rest on the side of her head. Dunno, a mask that suits your theme might make things worse with the kids. Ghoul rolls his eyes and elbows her at her teasing. So what happened to you? He asks. Miyako shrugs. Found out I don't like being a dude, did some stuff with my quirk and wound up like this. As for my fox traits, Miyako blinks and sniffs Ghoul a little, intensely disturbed, she casts up a privacy ward. You smell like changeling. Ghoul looks at her, then laughs. Yeah, I do. I'm not one, but there is one I visit a lot, because my baby brother is still in the Feywild. Want my help? I've done a couple of escapes for changelings before. I know. Himiko Toga and Takami Kigo. But, my brother's situation is a bit more involved than theirs. How? Shoto's already decided he wants to come back to Earth when his changeling is done, as himself, so we can't fake his death. And he's Shoto Todoroki, so it's not exactly easy to even get to him. Ghoul explains. Miyako stares, and after a while of trying to figure out a quick and easy method, rubs her temples with a hand. That is difficult. Any incriminating evidence? Tons. Ghoul replies. But who the hell would care? Would want to fight the number 2 hero in court for child abuse? Well, I am owed a number of favors. I could call in 2 people who I think are just chaotic enough to think of it as potentially a fun pastime. And one of them actually already knows about magic. We saw that particular one earlier today, in fact. Blurred into existence several times to drop off patients. It takes a moment, but realization seems to hit Ghoul like a rock to the teeth. What? Yep. I'll need you to come with me though. No idea how to convince him without you. Also, what's your real name? It's Natsuo Himura. He states. I have a sister called Fuyumi Himura that's on Earth. Our older brother decided on Gaia for himself though. Cool. You got a message for him? Miyako asks, giving an impish grin as Natsuo gives her a flat glare. Okay, now I know you fully became a kitsune. You weren't nearly this much of a little sheet as a human. But yes, after Shoto's changeling gets pulled, I'll get you to bring a message to Tuya. Miyako giggles a little, then gets up with a stretch. Well, I have work to do. She grins and pats Natsuo on the shoulder. Have a day. She says, remembering the doctors at the hospital telling her to never wish a slow or good day on anyone working medical. It tempted fate far too much. She dismisses the privacy ward and looks at the time. She sighs and rolls her eyes as she kicks off the ground, heading back towards home. Welp, it got me out of class for the day, but the teachers are going to be annoying. She checks her texts and hums, a bit surprised as a notification from Mina pops up. Acidic Pink. Acidic Pink, Acidic Pink, just got home from school, but the teachers showed the news while we were in class. Acidic Pink, you alright? They showed an aerial view and it looked really bad. Arcane Green. Honestly? Nope. Not okay. Lot of people died in this one and I'm going to probably need to take my anger out on the ocean. And talk to my therapist about it. Acidic Pink, yikes. Can I come over? I wanna hug you. Miyako's head lists to the side a little. Did she want Mina over after something like this? Usually she really needs to be alone after disaster-level incidents, but right now her heart is saying, yes please. Well, as Mom always says, listen to the heart more than the brain. Acidic Pink. Arcane Green, sure, you can come over. Not sure if I'll be very pleasant conversation or anything, but having company sounds nice. Acidic Pink, I'll be at yours in an hour. Miyako hums and puts away her phone as she continues her flight. Mina blinks as she reaches where she's so sure Miyako's house should be, and sees nothing. Ah, forgot. She mutters, quickly reaching into her pocket and slipping on a leather bracelet. The house her friend lives in suddenly seems to exist then. Not like it pops up or anything, it just stops not existing. Mina knocks on the garage door to the Midoria house, knowing full well that her friend was most likely in that part of the house at this time of day. Sure enough, there's the sound of a tool being slightly fumbled before Miyako asks, "Who dares?" In a calm tone. "It's Mina," she shouts. Suddenly the garage door opens, much faster than any other door of its type that Mina had seen. She decides against questioning it, since most likely Miyako would say something along the lines of, "A magician never reveals their secrets," and move the conversation to a different subject. "Hey," Miyako says, waving with a smile. "Head inside. I just gotta get some stuff stored, then I'll join you." Mina nods, making her way through the garage and into the house proper. Being inside the Midoria house is always such a fun but also bizarre experience, because while most of the things Miyako makes are stored in the garage or in the girl herself's room, there's still lots of odd trinkets scattered around any given room in the house. Most of the lamps in the house are just softly glowing crystals that you can dim or brighten by rubbing a rune on them. The fridge, freezer, oven, toaster, and stove all also feature their own crystalline nonsense. One time Mina had come over and had to get something from the medicine cabinet, only to discover Miyako had made legitimate healing potions at one point and just has them stored in the medicine cabinet for emergencies. Honestly, if she wasn't busy laughing at the look Katsuki gained knowing Miyako could do that, Mina would have had an aneurysm herself. There's an odd clicking sound and Mina looks to see a green griffin tilting her bird-like head at her. "Oh, hey Sylvia. Is Inko around?" Sylvia gives a little bow of her head, indicating that yes, Inko is around. "Well, tell her I'm just here to hang out with Miyako." Once again, the griffin gives a bow of her head, then turns away and flies off. And none of those things are even counting what the hell the Midoria backyard looks like. Mina's no physicist, but whatever happened to make it so their backyard functions as the massive herb garden that's back there probably broke all of the laws of spacetime. "Yo!" Mina blinks as Miyako comes out of the garage. "Wanna go to the backyard? Fairly sure some of the lemons are good for picking." "Sure," the pink girl says, walking to the back door and sliding it open. As she steps outside, as is the usual when she's at Miyako's house, she's hit by a radical change in air quality. From the filtered air of inside the house, to stepping into a forest. The scenery matches the smell, only a small porch before stepping into a forest with trees, herbs, and a small footpath. This breaks my brain a little every time I see it," Mina says, taking a deep breath of the clean air. Miyako snorts and hops off the porch. "Follow if you can," she shouts, then turns into a black and green fox that darts off into the forest. Mina blinks a few times, then sighs, rolling her shoulders before taking off in a jog, already knowing where the lemon tree is. She really does love Miyako's new lease on everything, but it does keep her on her toes sometimes. After a bit of wandering aimlessly through the forest together, Miyako and Mina return to the porch to rest. "So, feeling a little better?" Mina asks. "Yep," Miyako replies, nodding and leaning back in her chair. "Strangely, I don't feel like I'll need to go out to the ocean to relax. Though I am now exhausted." Miyako groans a little. "So I guess I'm still not an extrovert." Mina huffs. "Good, because then our friend group would grow imbalanced. Gotta have one introvert per extrovert." Miyako giggles a little. "So, what were you working on earlier? It didn't look like cosplay stuff." Mina questions. Miyako grins. "Something to help with how I cast stuff. A focus, essentially." "Like a wand?" Mina asks after squinting a bit. "Yep, pretty much, but it's not going to be shaped like one. Probably gonna make another cane. Currently I'm on the refining the enchantment stage though. Plus I'm also making armor and weapon designs I can use to go monster hunting." Miyako thinks in private. "Anyway, anything you want to do?" Miyako asks. Mina hums, peeling a lemon before eating it like an orange. "Not really." "You?" Miyako shakes her head. "If I had it my way I'd go back to my workshop and just work all day." "Yeah, not happening. We can just hang out in silence though," Mina says. "Nah, you'd get bored or understimulated." Miyako says. "Wanna talk shop about your hero costume plans? I'm still not extremely good at style, but I could probably help you figure it out." Mina shrugs. "Sure, why not?" On a particularly unremarkable day, Miyako decides to make an appointment. "Hello again, Yagi-san," she says, settling into the seat across from All Might's civilian form. They're in a nondescript park and Yagi's dog, a golden retriever with bright cyan eyes, is running around with other dogs. "You look a little healthier than last time I saw you." "Ah, Midoriya," Yagi says, nodding. "And you look much more feminine. Have a good trip to Thailand?" "The weather was lovely," Miyako says with a huffed laugh and a nod. Anyways, I have a bit of a problem. She snaps her fingers and a barrier appears around them. An open-air version of secure speaking space. Yagi leans in, seeming serious. What's wrong? Simply put, changeling extraction. Miyako replies, and Yagi hums, eyebrows knitting together. Name of the child? Shoto Todoroki. Yeah, that explains why you came to me. Yagi says, frowning. Endeavor's kids became changelings? Why? Him. Miyako replies, shrugging. His kids are changelings because he's a serial child and spouse abuser. His wife is in a mental ward right now being cared after by her daughter, who is someone who came back from the Feywild. Shoto is the only one still stuck under that roof, and thus still stuck in the Feywild. Tuya, Fuyumi, and Natsuo are the names of his 3 other kids. What happened to Tuya? Yagi asks. Tuya had decided to go to Gaia instead of Earth, so his changeling was allowed to be as dramatic with his exit as he wanted. Faking his death was for the best. Yagi nods a little. I think that's fair. Alright, I'll help. What do you need me to do? Get in contact with Nedu and figure out how to explain this to him. I have a feeling he'll be able to figure out how to deal with the issue better than either you or I could. Natsuo's new name is Natsuo Himura. Fuyumi's name is much the same. According to Natsuo, they have collected tons of evidence against the man. Yagi nods. A little disappointing that I can't just go over there and cave in his skull myself, but needs must. Can I meet with the Himura siblings? That's when someone enters the bubble. Absolutely. Miyako snorts as Yagi nearly jumps a foot into the air at the voice that comes from behind him. A young woman with white hair, which has red highlights, and steel-gray eyes walks up to the table and sits down. I'm Fuyumi. Natsuo would have been here, but he's busy. University stuff. You know how to set up a speaking space? Miyako asks. Fuyumi nods, and as Miyako waves a hand, dispelling her own, a steely gray bubble appears around the group of 3. Cool, then I'll be back after you're done talking. Natsuo already told me the details and I'm afraid I might manifest my presence if I have to hear it again. Later, she skips backwards and casts invisibility on herself, flying up into the air. Let's see, her mouth twists in annoyance as she can't think of anything to do. F it, Jade, we're gonna play around a bit. She thinks towards the wolf, landing and shape-shifting into her fox form. The green wolf appears in a flash of light as she cancels her invisibility. Hit me with your best shot, feline wolf. Miyako does a valiant recreation of rolling her eyes at Jade's taunt before pouncing on the big dog, who dodges to the side, letting a sarcastic chuff out. I really hate when you get competitive. She says to Jade, who just lets out another chuff. Yagi Tashanori is a calm, kind, and patient man. Really, he is. The fact that he has to repeat that to himself after Fuyumi revealed to him what Endeavor had done to their changelings when he thought they were his own children is an outlier. Fuyumi smirks a little. I know you're agitated, but look. She points. Our mutual friend is playing with your dog. Tashanori blinks, squinting as he looks up to see a black and green fox prowling after his familiar, Marcus, who is normally a massive lion, of the Nemean variety, but is currently under the effect of the normalcy ability, thus reverting him to the form of a golden retriever. The fox pounces, and the 2 animals trade playful blows before separating, then the fox is tackled by a green wolf and liked all over. The fox lets out a shout in the wolf's face then rolls over, shaking off slobber. Marcus is a lion normally, you know that? A huge one. You did a familiar ritual? Yes. Midoria taught me how to do it, and I got a trained emotional support golden retriever soon after because my therapist has been recommending I get a pet for a while. The fox seems to sigh and hops up in the air, transforming back into Midoria before landing on her feet. She gives the 2 dogs pats before returning to the table. You 2 done? I finished telling him about everything I know. Fuyumi replies, nodding. Marcus walks over and shoves his head into Tashanori's lap. Sorry for not coming over sooner. The clever one distracted me. The lion's voice comes through in Tashanori's head. Tashanori shrugs and pets the dog with a huff. It's all right. I think it was for the best anyways. So, any idea what to do? Indeed. Honestly, I think just telling Nedu the truth of the matter, minus any changeling involvement, would convince him enough. Though if you want me to change anything else about the story? No, Fuyumi says. Tell him the full details. Tashanori nods. Then I'd say this meeting is done. He slowly stands. Good talking with you too, but I like to get started on things like this as fast as possible. Midoriya and Himura just gives him nods. Good luck then. I wanted to get some other stuff done today too, you okay on your own, Himura? The woman nods. Thanks for the concern, but I'll be fine. Cool. Midoriya floats up into the air, Jade hopping into the air and turning into smoke that rushes into the Kitsune. See ya around then. With a crack of displaced air, the girl flies off. Miyako returns home after the meeting, intent on finishing one of her personal projects, dubbed the loadout. But as she gets to her room, where she does the less harmful enchanting studies, she notices new things laying on her desk. Miyako hums, pulling the new items into the air with telekinesis. Seems the changelings decided on what to give me for helping Kanoko? Monsters, an understanding, beginner's guide to monster hunting, and dungeons, an understanding along with a map, huh? She thinks, opening the map and finding it to be a full map of Earth with various dots on it as well as highlighted areas denoting places where monsters usually spawn. Well, I know what I'll be doing after I finish the loadout and have time to do some investigations, she mutters, grinning a little. The next year goes by fairly fast for Miyako. She just works on all of her projects and teacher's assignments, does her job as a healer, passes tests easily, hangs out with her friends more often than in previous years, and moves on to being a second year in high school. It's about halfway through her second year that Miyako is called into healer duty and gets even somewhat interesting news. She's healing up an elderly couple, severe burns. Who even did this? She mutters, going over to assist another healer who was likely to have that kinda info. Endeavor. The other healer says. Got into a fight with a villain in a building and didn't think about the surrounding civilians. Miyako rolls her eyes. Of course he didn't. She then stands up and looks at the rest of the survivors. Right, I'm gonna do a big spell, try and get rid of all the minor wounds. The healer nods to her, so she sticks an old-fashioned pipe into the mouth of her mask and mimes taking a deep drag, before using a spell that creates a healing mist. Especially good against burns. Her mask seems to breathe the mist out, then the mist starts clinging onto all of their burns. Now we can focus on the people worst off. There's a guy over there that's hemophobic. Ghoul says, making Miyako blink at the fact that he's here. She hadn't noticed him. Miyako nods and jogs over. When the incident is finally over 2 hours later, Miyako and Ghoul rest on a bench. How's it going, Ghoul? Haven't seen you around in forever. Oh, well, it's going great. He says, shrugging. I'm just really busy with this, school, and the other issues. Probably meaning getting Shoto's changeling out. But otherwise, all good. Anything I can help with? Miyako questions. Nah, not really. The man says, the people you brought in on the other issues have it basically handled, it's just taking a while. There is something kinda unrelated you can do though. Mom wants to meet you. Miyako blinks at him. They're letting her have visitors? Natsuo shakes his head. It was the first thing the help resolved. She's out of the hospital. The biggest issue right now is making the case for custody airtight. Natsuo explains. Send a list of what she'll need to make it airtight. If I get any ideas I'll contact you. You don't need to do that, kid. Miyako rolls her eyes. I think you underestimate how weird my life is. I have favors due everywhere, not just with heroes. There are like 7 restaurants I can get her foot in the door for work with. Most of them because I helped fix one appliance or another, one because I helped them repair their family heirloom. She can tell that Natsuo wants to ask about that last point, but he squints instead. And you just do that? Why? Miyako just shrugs, barely managing to force herself to not roll her eyes. Every time with everyone, the exact same question. Why the hell not? I think by now you should really understand that I'm living life by just doing whatever I think is right alongside things I find fun. I don't do healer work for money, not that I care if people do, I just do it because I love saving people too much. I already make more money than I know what to do with anyway. If you want to reward me, introduce me to Shoto once he and his changeling swap. He's around my age, right? Could be a new friend. She trails off a little, and hums, squinting off into space as she thinks. Yeah, F it. She decides, shrugging. Also, if your mom wants to meet me, I'll call all of you over. Along with a few of my friends. And maybe Yagi. But I'll only do it after Shoto's thing is done. I need time to make it so you guys can even see my home anyway. What? Miyako shrugs. Don't worry about it. Anyway, I've got stuff to do, see ya. She rolls to her feet and teleports away, reappearing in her workspace. Shoto Himura blinks a bit as someone enters his room. He'd been living in an orphanage in the Feywild with his family for years. He's now in the middle of a higher education course for children planning on going to Earth. So when the changeling who was assigned to clone him and keep people from being suspicious is the one to walk into his room, he jumps and stares at the person. Ah? Congrats, Shoto. The changeling says. Your mother now has official custody of you, and that means it's time for you to return to Earth. Shoto blinks again, and nods, smiling a little. Thank you, he says, and the changeling pats him on the shoulder. I'm just doing my job, kiddo. A wind buffets Shoto's face, and suddenly he's standing inside an apartment. An older woman looking at him as though asking a question. What, sorry? He asks. She smiles sadly. I asked if you'd be alright joining me tomorrow. The person who helped set this all up has invited us to their house. Shoto blinks, he'd heard from his changeling about the person assisting them. It was someone who knew of magic and used it regularly. The acting link lets him slip into the mask the changeling had used. I will be alright, yes. Oh, they were acting awkward as hell, he thinks, internally blushing. Miyako blinks as her alarm goes off, hopping into the air a little. Her stomach twists a little. Time to greet my guests, she takes a deep breath, grabbing the wooden rings she'd made to allow them to see her house. She uses a new spell she'd called Misty Step to warp to just outside her house. Hello. She sings a little, grinning lopsidedly at her friends, who all have their bracelets on and irritated looks. Yeah, I changed the key required to see the house since your keys are all a bit outdated with the tech I can pull off. She pulls out the rings, all way too big to fit on a finger, but too small to fit on a wrist. Each of you needs to put one of these on a pointer finger. They'll resize to fit, don't worry. If you feel a strange connection with it for a moment, that means the enchantments are working and it's soulbound to you. Doesn't do anything but identify you as someone I trust and thus let you into the wards of my house without getting ejected like you're shot out of a cannon. Katsuki, Mina, and Ijiro all take one without hesitation, slipping them on and stepping past Miyako into the property. Miyako hears gasps from the others as they just seem to disappear according to their eyes. Tashanori goes next, then Nedu, whose curious gaze remained pinned on her since she left the ward lines. Natsuo, Fuyumi, Rei, and Shoto go next. Thanks for helping them. Shoto mutters as he walks past, and Miyako grins, knowing what he meant. Mitsuki and Masaru had shown up with Katsuki, and they take the last two keys. I'm starting to understand how you and Inki stayed hidden. Mitsuki says, being one of the few family friends that Miyako's mom kept contact with. She was baffled by the fact that Miyako and Inko had managed to disappear entirely. Miyako gives a sly grin before walking inside the wards alongside the pair. She steps into the entranceway alongside them, and smiles a little at the awe in the looks everyone gives the floating lights she'd set up since last time anyone had come by. I call them fairy lights. Though real fairies look quite different, I imagine. Shoto huffs a laugh. Entirely. Shoto? Rei questions. Save the questions for later, come on, I'll collect Mom, then we'll go to the garden out back. It's the most well-protected part of the house. Nedu watches the world around him as they walk through the house, which is decorated with all sorts of fantastical items that float, glow, or otherwise seem quite mystical. Soon enough they collect a woman who definitely seems like Midoriya's parent, but she lacks the mutation. They then pass through to the backyard, where Nedu feels something in his brain snap as he looks out at the actual forest ahead of them. Your house wasn't? What? The Bakugo mother questions, looking between the back door and the path ahead with a very disturbed look. So, this place has even more protections on it than the main house, thus it's the easiest place to talk about what I wanted to talk about. Miyako says, gesturing with a hand and causing the door to the yard to shut. My quirk allows me to do 3 things. Learn magic and other crafts associated with it with a very efficient teacher, write directly into my memory, and read every written language that exists. Notice that nowhere in this did it say that I could teach others these abilities as part of my quirk. And yet? Mom, summon Sylvia. Nedu blinks as suddenly light green smoke bursts from the Midoriya matriarch and forms a half-eagle, half-lion that stands proudly with her wings just slightly flared. 3 rocks seem to float over from the forest, dark green in color. Mom performed the familiar ritual, and so far as I know, that's the only magic she's done, but anyone can learn the art if they have a teacher or the will to just figure it out. But, seeing as she's related to me, you could probably view that as a possible explanation, so, Natsuo, Fuyumi, and Shoto? I want you each to lift one of these rocks with force, if that's okay. All 3 siblings nod, making their mom's eyes go wide as they simply look at the rocks and they start floating. One with cyan-colored light, another with gray, and the final one glowing pink. Nedu feels a headache forming. All of this is to say, magic is real, and anyone can learn it. Miyako says, smiling a little. Nedu feels his headache shatter like glass and melt away, the knowledge that magic is real seeming to bleed away the feeling of pain. And what do you want me specifically to do with this information? Nedu asks. Honestly, nothing. Not right now at least. Magic still needs to remain secret for the time being. Yagi-san can fill you in on how exactly that whole situation started, since he honestly knows more about it than I do. I mostly said this for Rei-san's benefit. Izuku looks towards the white-haired woman. They are here now, but for as long as Endeavor has been abusive towards your children and he was around, he has seen hide nor hair of them. You want to tell me something about Tuya. Technically I want your kids to, since they also know more about that situation. But I also would like you all to know that Kitsune are messengers, tricksters, and hunters by nature. If you four want me to go over and give Tuya a message of some kind, feel free to ask. I want to go explore a bit over there and see the sights anyway. She then gets up and stretches a little. Over where? Katsuki asks. Ask the others. I'm already stretching my personal talking limit just saying that magic is real. Miyako steps off the porch and walks off into the forest. I'm gonna get you all some snacks. Nedu, any preference or poisons? No poisons, but a preference for tree nuts. Or cheese if you have any. Nedu answers absent-mindedly, high-specs filtering and repackaging past data in his mind to fit the paradigm shift that is magic existing. The Kitsune nods and suddenly transforms into a dark green fox before darting off into the forest. Suddenly, Shoto begins giggling, then outright laughs at the looks Kirishima and Katsuki give her. A magician never reveals her secrets. She says in a decent imitation of Miyako's voice. She was waving this in our faces the entire time without outright saying it. It's more like she was making sarcastic quips the entire time that make far more sense in hindsight, rather than mocking you three with the information. Inko Midoria says, seeming worried. The Bakugos seem to see her anxiety. Don't worry about it, Inko. Mitsuki Bakugo says. She probably has her reasons to keep this secret. Ain't that right, brat? She asks her son, who slowly nods. I can't deny hating the fact that she was keeping the secret and making snarky remarks like that, but she must have had a reason to keep it secret. Indeed. Yagi says. She was afraid of retaliation by someone All Might calls a nemesis. Her quirk called it a curse of ignorance, which is exactly what was cast when the quirk era started. Nobody but the flesh and blood of the person who cast it can reveal that magic is real. Little known fact about the person who cast its brother, he donated to SPRM banks for extra money while putting himself through college. He looks at Inko, whose eyes widen. Oh, cool. Inko says with a shrug. It's a bit weird that I got inseminated by ancient SPRM, but weirder things have happened. Miyako met a Dryad at the bottom of the ocean while doing some recycling work. And fought a Wyvern in the forest after meeting another Dryad. A Wyvern? Natsuo questions. How? Inko stares at him for a moment, unblinking. Almost like an unimpressed cat, then rolls her eyes a little as everyone else seems to be questioning it. Miyako has been training her abilities for combat since she's been allowed to buy her magic teacher. Her skills aren't as good as, say, pro heroes decades into their work, but she took down Muscular, Demon King Durzo, and several other villains that were giving heroes trouble single-handedly before she gained access to the boost of her Kitsune traits. Ah, so she's trained in combat just as well as healing. Inko sighs. From the day I finally let her go out and get licenses and pick up odd jobs, she's been doing nothing but working until I force her to take a break. Granted, she sees all of her jobs as just hobbies that she picked up. She finds them almost excessively fun, so I rarely have to force her to stop, since she'll just do it herself when she gets overwhelmed, and I haven't had to force her to go to therapy since the Durzo incident. Thank you for that, by the way, ghoul. Natsuo blinks and nods at her. Forgot about that conversation. Was happy to do it though. Netsu's ear twitches, hearing two pairs of footfalls rather than one as Midoriya steps back over. I made friends with someone who's born magic. Meet Kinoko, the fungus Dryad. She says, setting a plate full of various fruits and tree nuts on a nearby small table. Netsu blinks as a girl in a red dress with white spots steps out from the tree lean, nervously fiddling with her fingers. Though he also feels the unerring sense that she is most definitely not human. It doesn't discomfort him, not being human himself, but it does make him curious. That feeling that she's not human is just an extra sense attached to your mana. Don't worry too much about it unless you find yourself subconsciously fearing her. Miyako says, shrugging a little. So, she sits in a chair and a number of other chairs get pulled from seemingly nowhere, creating a place to sit for everyone. A tome manifests in her lap along with an expensive-looking pen. Any questions? Netsu finds that he has many, but he lets the others go first. Hey Mina, wanna go on a date? Miyako asks one day, during lunch at school. She's very tired of answering questions that she had written down a week ago, and decided to act on something that's been brewing in the back of her mind for a while. Mina blinks at Miyako owlishly for a moment, then nods. Sure. Cool. They're doing reruns of the Alien remake in a theater where one of my recycler buddies lives. I'll go to your place, then we head that way? Mina gives a nod, then blinks. Wait, what? Miyako tilts her head at the girl. I asked you out, you said yes. She trails off, face turning very purple as her unique blood rushes to it. Miyako gives Katsuki a curious look. He rolls his eyes. She's had a crush on you since you traded your Y for an X. Ah? Miyako's face turns red. She groans a little. Shouldn't have asked, this is just going to make the actual date awkward. Mina is still spaced out, but soon enough she recovers and pulls Miyako closer. Why? Miyako's face pinches in confusion. Have you not noticed that for the past year you are the one I hang out with the most? Hell, for the past most of our school lives I preferred hanging out with you over those two. I let you get the closest out of anyone other than my own mother. I still don't let Ijiro or Katsuki touch me for too long, yet you grab onto me like a koala and I'm perfectly content with it. And what about Dash? Would you like me to also detail the level of SXL attraction I feel? Because that'll make everyone uncomfortable, but I'm willing to. That sends Mina into another spiral of sputtering rather than probably asking about her quirk. Miyako doesn't have a problem with it and would rather just avoid the subject for now since she knows Mina tends to get stubborn when it comes to her quirk's destructive abilities. I beg you not to. Katsuki deadpans. Then beg, Miyako replies, then giggles as that seems to break Mina out of her confused sputtering. What did you think I was actually asking you for? I dunno, extracurricular stuff. That emphasis means she's really talking about magic. Miyako shrugs. No, I'm still answering those questions that I wasn't able to during the meeting. I need a break and the crush I have on you has been digging a hole in my brain for the past year, so I decided to ask you out. 2 birds, 1 stone. Though I didn't expect the feeling to be mutual. I didn't even research what the hell to do in this scenario. Usually you'd still go on the date to see if it'd work out. Katsuki idly mentions, still picking at his food when Miyako gives him a flat look. Yeah, okay, I can figure that much. She says, turning back to Mina. So this was a mess. Do you actually want to go, or did you just nod along because your brain shorted out? An Alien rerun in theaters? Are you kidding? I'd love to go even if this wasn't a date. Wanna get food after or? Miyako shrugs. If we don't end up gorging ourselves at the theater. Mina nods. Fair. The one with the most brain cells is going to date the one who doesn't have any. Mom was right, opposites do attract. Ijiro says. Miyako raises an eyebrow at him then gestures between him and Katsuki. I could say the same with this shtick. The biggest ball of sunshine you ever did see, she points at Kirishima, then with a half-open eyes, points at Katsuki, and his chain chomp. Katsuki flips her off. Mina has a moment of panic when she gets home, but manages to play it off as nerves from an upcoming exam to her parents before retreating to her room. Do I even have nice clothes? She blinks as her phone chimes. Fox girl. Fox, yo. Should we ride the train there, or are we gonna fly? Choice is yours. My flight license lets me take a single passenger but I think the theater will be open if we go by train. Acid, let's go with train, but if we end up late you can fly me. Fox, K. Fox, also my mom caught wind of our date and is helping me dress while teasing me about not doing anything she wouldn't. Fox, this normally wouldn't have any effect but she's ace and thus I know what she's teasing me about. Save me EE. Acid, how nice should I dress? There's a pause, then Miyako sends a message with a photo. It's taken in her mirror, she's wearing black glasses with a dimly glowing green crystal in the center, a thin black and green striped zipper hoodie. The one, Mina remembers, has pockets for her ears. Because I want to be adorable sometimes. The aesthetic tickles me when I look in the mirror. Miyako had told her, the zipper also reveals that Miyako has on a black cropped shirt underneath the jacket. She's wearing a deep red skirt. She doesn't own real skirts as Mina had been told, she likes flying too much to risk it, long black socks, then deep red flats. She also doesn't want to risk her life by walking, according to the girl herself. She'd been told several horror stories by her mom about the medieval torture weapon of a shoe called heels. Her hair is tied into a long braid. Holy crap, when did her hair get that long? And she has a small amount of makeup applied, only really noticeable because Mina had known her for so long. After a long moment of silence, Mina coughs, suddenly remembering that she has to breathe. Fox, I dunno. Apparently I'm wearing this though. Acid, well, Acid, honestly I'm not sure if I can remember how to breathe in your presence, dressed like that. Why the hell did I send that? She questions herself, but soon enough she gets a text back. Fox, well, healers are required to be CPR certified. Winky face. Fox, never flirting like that again. Mina snorts, knowing that Miyako did start out genuinely finding it fun, then ended up conjuring all the memories of her actually having to do CPR before. When she hadn't created the CPR spell. Acid, it was cute though. LH. Acid, SRSLY though, don't do anything that'll make you uncomf for my sake. Fox, oh no, I'm just not going to use my healer stuff. It puts me in a clinical mindset and I did not like the images doing CPR on you conjured. Acid, you're still in therapy, right? Fox, I am. Straight face. Fox, I'm not crying or anything over it, was just a jump scare. And no, there haven't been resurgences of that either. Mina breathes a sigh of relief despite herself. That is essentially the aftermath of the Demon King incident. Basically nobody but Mina had seen it, but for a while after that event, Miyako was still in a mode of blind rage towards villains and had, multiple times, gone out to the ocean to vent out those frustrations. The thing is, Miyako was in that mode when she came across a giant villain-looking guy standing over a couple of their classmates. Mina went to intervene, and right as she got between the girls and the giant, it was as if Miyako manifested. Except she looked like Izuku at the time, and was emitting a black mist of some sort. His voice at the time came out distorted. Leave. Now. Don't get her wrong, she finds the fact that it worked very cool, but at the same time, it made him far scarier than even the villain. Something about that mist terrified her. It was only after he breathed out that he turned and smiled at them, making both her and the other girls remember that no, it's not another scarier person standing there, it's just Midoria. It was then that Midoria explained his issues that stemmed from the Demon King incident. And as it turned out, he'd gained a new ability that his quirk called predatory presence. It essentially makes her exude the presence of, say, a polar bear. Something that could kill you and have fun doing it before eating you. She'd been going to therapy for about a week or two by then, but rather than venting in a healthy way by talking to people, her introverted but went out into the ocean and summoned a typhoon to use up most of her mana so she'd be too exhausted to be angry. Fox, anyway, let's not darken the day with that stuff. Show me what you'll wear. Acid, alright, hold on. Honestly, Mina's not sure she can do anything to look nice while standing next to someone as pretty as Miyako, but she does have an outfit in mind. Miyako stares at her ceiling while waiting for Mina to send the picture, thinking on the time that she'd developed her crush on the other girl. It was honestly a bit unexpected, but seeing her step up and try to help those girls against that giant villain felt like it set something alight in Miyako's heart, which at the time felt a little cold and dead. It was only after she'd turned into a girl that she realized what the feeling was fully. Her mixed feelings towards girls in general, wanting to both be them and be with them, had been active in full force towards Mina because the girl is cheerful, bright and fun. Meanwhile, he was not very good at socializing, hated faking his emotions which at the time were always dreary because dysphoria is a beach, and his favorite activity was and technically still is studying. Now she finds herself getting a little better with socializing. She talks to people, even though she doesn't know now, not that she's very good at seeming friendly, finds herself happy far more often, looking in the mirror makes her feel like her head might explode with happiness, and she now starts her days with showers, and her favorite activity is still studying, but she's not fully fixated on that and has developed her hobbies outside of her academic interest. Finding her various jobs to be actually fun now, rather than something she does because, felt like it. Still, she's really not sure why Mina likes her so much that she'd short-circuit at being asked out. Acid girl. Acid, welp, here's the picture. Miyako blinks, looking at the image. Mina's wearing a cropped leather jacket and a black shirt under it, a pair of jeans and her specially made shoes, also a bit of makeup, just enough that Miyako noticed, but only because Miyako has known Mina for so long. She stares at the image dumbly, a jumbled up wad of words leaving her mouth. Her mom, who was still in her room to make sure Miyako didn't do something like wipe the makeup off her face since it was the first time the girl actually tried it, blinks. Wow, I can translate your muttering normally, what the heck was that? Miyako just makes another noise like that, and her mom blinks again, seeming to catch the word and unravel it in her head. Ah, Mina's really pretty and you had a lot of words to describe it, but all of them seemed too little, so you used magic to say all of them at once. DMN her mother for being able to translate her so well. Well, I can't say I wasn't worried, but it seems like you'll be fine. I'm dying. Miyako says. Inko snorts. Can't say I know where this is coming from, never experienced attraction of that kind in my life, but you aren't dying. I am. You're going to do that smug giggle at my funeral. It isn't smug. She mutters. Miyako would normally point out that she didn't deny giggling at her funeral, but she's busy typing a reply. Fox, I'm over here, unable to remember words correctly, and meanwhile my mother is giggling smugly. She's still in my room because I've never worn makeup before and knowing me I'd rub it off the second I get the chance. Acid, now you know what it's like for me 3C. Fox, dunno, I can still breathe. I just ended up saying all of the words that mean pretty, beautiful, and cute all at once. Acid, thanks. Anyway, you gonna head here? Fox, yeah, just lemme. Wait, would it be better for me to fly there, or go by train? Acid, fly, ya goof. We need to get on the train quick, right? Fox, yeah, probably. It's been a while since I renewed my train schedule book. Dunno if I'm right about that. Miyako gets up from her bed. Well, I'm off now, I guess. Have fun, sweetie. Hope it goes well. Just not too well. One of these days I'm going to make you uncomfortable enough to make up for all of the teasing over the years. Her mom just snorts, and she rolls her eyes in annoyance before leaving. Miyako snorts as Mina looks at her. Shut up. Mina says, already pouting. You love horror movies. Thrills are fun. You screamed so loud my ears hurt. Screw you. You'll have to make it to at least the third date for that dash. Mina smacks her on the arm for that remark. And I doubt that situation will result in less screaming dash, another smack. Just for a different reason. Mina glares for a moment, then lets out a deluge of giggles, smiling slightly. She then sighs. I'm really bad at handling you being flirtatious. It's weird, since I used to be the one making all those jokes. Miyako smirks. You're good with joking around, but as soon as the flirting and lewd jokes are even slightly serious your brain shouts, Mayday, Mayday. Miyako shrugs. Perfectly natural. Making you go purple is quickly asserting itself as my love language. Careful though, I'm fairly certain if you tease me now we won't leave this park without a hickey each. They had stopped in a nature park to discuss and plan a little of the later half of their date, then ended up eating ice cream on a bench because there was a store for it nearby. And if I were to call you on your bluff? Mina asks, smirking a little. Miyako's mouth purses a little and she squints, genuinely thinking on it. We'd need somewhere less public. I doubt either of us would actually want our first kisses to be on a park bench with everyone judging us. Plus if it does actually escalate out of control. Mina blinks, the idea of people judging their kissing skills leading her brain down a weird path. I dunno, I think it'd be funny to find out if the judges have scorecards. Miyako giggles. Could you imagine? Would they commentate like at a golf game? Or would it be more like pro wrestling? Mina starts laughing a little. Kissing is more like competitive ballet or ice skating, SEC is pro wrestling. Miyako lets out a snort, then after a moment of silence, she holds her hand up for Mina to see. Luckily the usually dense girl seems to get the hint, taking Miyako's hand. The pair lapse into silence. Calmly sitting against each other for a long while, until eventually Mina gets up and drags Miyako up with her. Come on. I just had an idea. Miyako follows her gets dragged all the way into an arcade, where Mina rushes the two of them to a picture booth. When Miyako raises an eyebrow at the girl, Mina blushes very deeply. This date has been really good. Wanted to, she starts snapping in a way that means she's going through words in her head, trying to find the right one. Miyako smiles. Commemorate? Yes. That. Us getting together, with a picture. Alright. Miyako says, still smiling as she pulls the blinds for the booth shut. I dunno how to use these though. At that remark, Mina calms a little and smiles more normally. I'll get it, all you have to do is look pretty. Tough job. Miyako says, and Mina snorts. You do it on a daily basis and still have the energy to do your 3 jobs and attend school with the rest of us mortals. I think you'll live. Miyako almost pouts when she can't think of a jab back as her cheeks burn red. Instead, when Mina backs off and slings an arm around Miyako's shoulder, urging her to smile, Miyako kisses her on the cheek, right when the booth takes the picture. Mina takes a moment to squint down at her, even as her face turns purple again, before kissing her on the cheek back. And thus the war was on. A lot of kissing, and probably getting an irresponsible level of frisky, later. The pair leave the photo booth with, as promised, a hickey each. Not that anyone can see them since Miyako used a spell to make someone's eyes slip past that particular section of skin. They then go for a wander, just walking around hand in hand, looking at the sights as time turns to night and the world changes. Lights coming on and various night-only shops opening. It's close to when the sky would go black when Mina jumps slightly. My parents wanted me home before sunset. Miyako looks up at her, then sighs. Luckily we still have time before the sun fully sets. Unluckily you won't be able to go fast enough. Right. Miyako takes a breath, then climbs onto Mina's back, making sure to lighten herself and turn the pair of them invisible first. What are you doing? Just a warning, this is going to feel really unstable for you, but I promise the only thing that could take you from me would be a hydraulic spreader, and even then you'll land safely. Miyako can feel when Mina feels herself lighten to be less weight than a feather, as her legs automatically curl in. Mina says, panicked but not really wanting to stop. Think of it like a roller coaster, only I'm in charge, so less chance of accidents. Miyako points out, and that seems to calm Mina a lot, her tensed muscles relaxing. Now, I'll start slow, but by the end we'll be going pretty quick. Mina nods, and Miyako creates a small gust, pushing them up into the air and bringing them higher than the buildings. Is this what you always see? Mina questions. Kinda. Most of the time everything's a blur because I'm blitzing to do my healer job. Speaking of, ready to start moving towards the destination? Mina nods, so Miyako makes another gust, pushing them towards Mina's house. This is speed 1. Tell me when you're ready for speed 2. And be really sure. Mina gives another nod, seemingly still dumbstruck by the sights around them. After a few moments, she takes a deep breath, and gives an affirmative for Miyako to go faster. So Miyako creates a vacuum effect in front of them. The world blurs by as they break the sound barrier, not that anyone can tell because there's no air to distort with their passage. Miyako only makes that cracking noise when she's being a show-off. She feels Mina tense for a moment, only for her to relax a moment later. Wow! You really refined this. There's no roaring wind, no suffocating vacuum. It feels like they're just floating along while going far over the speed limit of any sane road. Yeah, isolation bubble is pretty great, Miyako remarks. Coming up on your house in 3, 2, 1, Miyako swerves their path into a downward spiral, slowly coming to a stop just before touching down on the ground, Mina doing a pretty decent landing for a first-timer, stumbling a bit but managing to stay upright with Miyako's help. Woof! That felt so strange. Fun, but very strange. Were you satisfied with your flight on Miyako Airlines? The girl in question asks, and Mina giggles. 8 out of 10, couple points off for the lack of refreshments. Mina replies. Miyako clicks her tongue as she lifts isolation bubble and cancels their invisibility. Knew I should have packed peanuts, that statement renews Mina's giggling. After that moment, they once again enter silence for a time before Miyako takes a deep breath in. So, was tea today enough for me to earn the title of a girlfriend? Mina blinks and raises an eyebrow. I should be the one asking that, really. That sends a surge of confidences through Miyako. Miyako pulls Mina closer and kisses her on the cheek. I'd be happy to call you mine. Then I'd feel the same as you. Mina says in return, before Miyako feels warmth press into her own cheek. Good God, Katsuki is going to call us such tropey beaches if we tell him about this part. Miyako remarks suddenly, the words spilling from her and making both girls giggle. Just smile at them when they ask? Mina asks after she's done giggling. Miyako nods. Just smile when they ask. The pair shake on it, then giggle some more before hugging and saying their goodbyes. Mina enters her house and is greeted cheerfully by her mom, who looks at the window, then nods. Just barely made it. Was talking in front of the house for a few minutes there. Her mom nods again, then smirks and gestures to her neck. Well, you certainly had fun. Made it so the spell will stay active while we're holding hands so I don't have to constantly focus on it. I'd make for a pretty shitty date if I had to stay silent the entire time, but might want to cover it up when you get home. Mina cringes. I would hope that you didn't. Her mom says with a flat look, and Mina purples. Mom. Miyako sighs as she gets home, a smile still on her face. The date really was amazing, but she is glad to be home. She steps into the living room and waves to her mom, who makes a snarky remark, well, somebody had a good night. Miyako blinks, then realizes that her mana isn't keeping up a single spell at the moment. She feels her neck and turns red up to her forehead. Without pause, Miyako's mother says, you better not have, with an amused look on her face. Mom. Later in the evening. Miyako wakes up to the sound of her alarm screeching. Sheet, forgot to mark myself unavailable for calls. Thank all above that nothing happened during our date. Miyako thinks, turning on her work phone and getting the instructions needed to get to a new disaster site. With that thought, she clips on her bracelet and opens her window, starting her flight. She shoots a quick text to her mom that she's going out for a healer job. Once she's fully on the way, she twists a plate on her bracelet and grins as it works. Her outfit changing from her sleepwear to a white long coat with a hood, her kitsune mask, a black shirt and pants, and combat boots. She flicks her wrist, and her cane appears in her hand. When she reaches the site, she swallows a little as she realizes that she's the first one to respond. She hadn't been first responder since the tests to get her license. Skiing a deep breath in, she throws her cane at a relatively unpopulated area and a green bubble springs up, a bright beacon lighting up the sky with winged snakes swirling around it. Landing in the center of the bubble, she watches the situation. Pretty Dard? Miyako blinks as she spots a flicker of lightning. A woman in a suit of plate mail armor blocks an attack by the villain with the flat of her blade. There's a flicker right next to her and a man appears. Black hair, white coat. You this place's version of a healer? He questions. Yes. Though here we aren't normally on retrieval duty. Fully in healer mode, Miyako doesn't give a f who he is. If you can use that speed to get patients out of the disaster zone, do it. Those two, she points to the disaster, where now a man had joined the woman in the fight, they're your friends. He nods. Tell them to only go in and grab victims. If they aren't licensed for heroism, that's the most they can do without getting into a f-ton of trouble. He nods again. Blurin will keep the place safe. Miyako blinks as the man flickers out and looks over to see a massive blue bear. Your master's a huge dork outside work, isn't he? The bear tilts his head cluelessly, Miyako snorts. Just to clear this up, this fight was ongoing. Miyako jumps a little as the woman appears next to her. We weren't here before. That thing was from where we were. Miyako nods. Got it. Still, let our version of professionals handle it. Trust me, you don't want to have to deal with the stigma our justice system will give you if you get labeled as a vigilante. You say this man started the fight and caused most of the disaster while injuring you. The woman nods, though she seems to have pouted at Miyako's lack of reaction to her info. Good. You're a patient then. Here. Miyako waves a hand at the girl and she blinks, standing straight as she feels more energized. This is a gray area, but if he attacks you while you're under my care, I'm legally allowed to do whatever necessary to subdue. Even kill if necessary. I'm going to apply an illusion to you both. She looks over at the man, who seems surprised that she noticed him. It'll give you regular civilian attire. She grabs 3 pebbles off the ground and hands 2 to the man and woman, then smiles at the fellow healer who brings back a pair of victims. A blonde girl with fox ears and a silver-haired girl with horns. She hands him the last pebble while simultaneously healing the victims. The 3 grab them, and their entire existence shifts, only being visible to Miyako, the man, and themselves. Feel free to taunt him. It's happened before and it's not like anyone has evidence of you existing anymore. The woman immediately puts 2 hands on the sides of her head and blows a raspberry at the man. Miyako smiles a little as that makes the man glare. How dare you? Making a mockery of me? Stopping my slaughter? I am the Demon King. Miyako's smile vanishes for a second, before it springs back up again, this time far too wide, venomous, and sharp. I will kill you and all you hold dear. I will destroy you. He lunges at the bubble, and Miyako takes a deep breath in, and feels a tingle on her skin as she lets loose what she has to normally hold down. Fire runs through her veins as she shivers, and black smoke explodes from her form, creating a massive black fox in the center of the street. Healers in this world have a right to protect their patients, no matter the cost. She points her finger at the now petrified Demon King, light flashes, and there's a loud bang. As 3 lightning bolts strike right down on the man. Holy shit, she hears the woman mutter. That was, like, 5 of my that one thing in particular, spells in each lightning bolt. He's still alive, by the way. Miyako says to her. She hears her gasp as the dust clears to show the man chained to the ground. His everything wrapped up with him knocked out. I'm allowed to kill but I generally don't like to. She reels back in her presence and takes a breath. That's when 13 shows up. Decided to try and hurt you, Verdante? The black hole user asks. Didn't like me stopping his slaughter. Starting to get worried that calling yourself a Demon King is becoming a trend among those underground. Miyako says to the space hero. Said hero chuckles and pats her on the shoulder while passing by. I'll get everyone I can to ya. Miyako nods. Thank you for your service. With a breath, she looks to the 3 who are newly arrived on her world. 2 of those lightning bolts created the chains and knocked him out. The 3rd wiped all knowledge of you 2 fighting that guy from anything that could have captured the footage. Feel free to release the pebbles. How are you feeling? The man looks around. Pretty disoriented, to be honest. I mean, I figured we might come back to Japan after we finished our job. But, how? He wordlessly gestures at Miyako's ears, which poke through holes at the top of her hood. You're at least 200 years late then. Either that or you got caught in a pulse and the rulers decided you'd do well here. Ice Guy protagonists. The woman nods. So does that often happen, or? Not often enough for you to be public about it, but it has happened a couple times. I've defeated 2 Demon Kings so far. Once the disaster is confirmed to be as over as it can be, I'll be able to help you 3 out more. Given the damage, I'd say give me half an hour tops. See that area? She points to the quarter of the bubble set up for people who can go out when the disaster is confirmed over. Sit tight over there. These two are fine now, so you can take them with, or they can stop pretending to sleep. She can't help the small smirk behind her mask as the pair jolt and sit up, immediately backing up, afraid of Miyako being genuinely angry. Okay, you can move, now get out of the way so I can keep healing my patients as they come in. A sidekick enters the bubble and quickly sets down a woman wearing a pink short dress. She has long golden hair tied up in a ponytail, and a tiara on her head. Definitely another pulsed one. She's badly bleeding in a few places and has broken bones in a number of places. Not to mention a ludicrous amount of internal bleeding, but she still has a pulse, thus she can still be healed. Probably got punched by that fucker. Miyako mutters, focusing. Ken grabs Kazuki's shoulder when he looks like he might start running out again upon seeing the princess who he'd made friends with. Ken still thinks there's more to it there but can also tell that Kazuki is denser than goddamn osmium with this stuff. She knows what she's doing. How do you know? Ken gives him a flat look. I'm a healer. She's a healer. Plus I can hear her muttering. She's giving more accurate healing than even Rose can pull off. Amako nods. She's terrifying. For once, agreed. Felm nods. Duh, she one-shot the guy we were struggling just to fight equally with. Oi, Nightman, come get your princess. The girl says, she's healed, but I don't want to be the first face she sees when she wakes up. Ken lets go of Kazuki's shoulder then shoves him forward when he seems to get cold feet. Ken watches as other first responders arrive, all giving a nod to their hero, Verdante, they call her. The first kid that comes out of the wreckage giggles as the girl creates a fish made of water that seems to wash away his wounds before swimming around him and diving into the ground. The woman holding the kid smiles and thanks her, which the girl waves off. A person, being made of concrete, steps past the girl and promptly places his hands to the ground, stabilizing the building that got battered by their battle by seemingly manipulating the concrete. He then starts directing other EMS personnel accurately, probably having a sense that lets him detect things connected to concrete. Still, Verdante doesn't have another healer with her, and as the people come flooding into the bubble, she creates a bunch of flying fish that seem to act as healing drones, spraying those with superficial wounds like cuts and bruises with water that heals them instantly. A kid comes in with a heavy injury. A particularly large piece of glass had opened a massive gash in his forearm. Ken watches as Verdante walks over to the kid. Hey kiddo. Let me have a look at that arm? He seems to daze away from crying upon looking at her mask, hugging his parent and holding the arm out without any more fuss. Like my mask? She questions, tilting her head a little, one of her ears going down cutely. She takes it off after he nods. Here, hold on to it for me. His other arm extends and grabs the white and green kitsune mask while the girl creates strawberry red energy from her hand and focuses on the boy's arm. And it is a girl. Her face is far too youthful for her to be anything beyond maybe a teen. In no time at all, the kid's arm is healed, and Miyako smiles and waves off the parent. Don't worry about the mask. It'll come back to me when the disaster's over. More fish start floating around as Miyako mutters, and now for rush hour. Ken blinks and looks to the disaster site to see the emergency responders coming over to the bubble. People in their arms. He watches as the girl heals each and every one, some requiring resuscitation, to which she punches them in the chest with a fist covered in lightning and they gasp awake immediately. Eventually, everyone is healed and clear, and that person in the spacesuit that was first to start the rescue effort. All right, everyone. Verdante says, clapping and smiling a little when everyone immediately quiets down. Everyone has officially been cleared of the disaster site and all of you have been healed to the best of my ability. Cementos has reinforced the building but that's temporary, so please follow the guidelines the police give you when leaving the area. If you are in any pain still or have any issues with going home at this time, the paramedics will be happy to take you to a nearby hospital. A few cheers go through the crowd and once again, Verdante smiles, then with a wave of her hand the strange cane at the center of the bubble flies to her hand along with her kitsune mask. All right, done. She mutters to the short astronaut, who gives a thumbs up. We should have tea again sometime. The astronaut quietly states, and Verdante shrugs. Maybe if I get a day off. I have a feeling my life just got a bit more strange again. Plus I have a girlfriend now. Can't have her think I'm cheating on her with one of her favorite heroes. Ken can hear the joke in the tone, and the astronaut hears it too, laughing to themselves. Well, either way, good working with you as always, Verdante. You too, 13. The pair separate and Verdante heads immediately towards him. Hello again. She says with a huffed sigh. Then a small giggle as she looks to the sides of Ken. Ken blinks and looks at his companions. All of them had fallen asleep. He rubs the back of his neck and makes to apologize, but Verdante just shakes her head. It's fine. I'm actually kinda impressed that they all managed to fall asleep in a place like this. Still, I need them awake. She snaps her fingers and it's like all of his companions just got injected with adrenaline, all of them shivering and shooting up to sit straight. Follow me, she says, and all of them stand up, immediately following her. Into a back alley. A wave passes over Ken and he shivers. Okay, no bugs or trackers. Nothing's looking at us. Suddenly, the world turns into a starscape and they appear somewhere else when things turn solid again. Ken looks around, seeing tools and equipment for a workshop. Welcome to my home, Verdante says. I am Miyako Midoria, healer, scrapper, crafter, kitsune, and generally the only girl in Japan that can use and understand magic. My mother is probably awake out there. Let me explain things and don't be dumb. How? How old are you? Suzune asks. Don't see how that's relevant, but 16. Second year of high school. Midoriya walks past them all and to a door out of the workshop. Suzune looks at Ken, wide-eyed, mouthing, 16. After a long while, a woman opens the door, smiling calmly at them. I'm Inko, Miyako's mother. She tells me you were displaced by a magical anomaly? This isn't your world? Kazuki nods. Yes ma'am. Though technically us three. He gestures to himself, Suzune, and Ken, came from a world similar to this one. We were Japanese students in a mundane world who got summoned to another world to act as heroes. We ended up here after getting in a fight with the Demon King. Ah. That explains it. Midoriya Sr. grimaces a little, then sighs. Well, you're welcome here, seeing as the wards on our house let you in. We know you don't have evil intentions towards anyone. I'll show you somewhere you'll be able to rest up. Miyako went back to bed as soon as she finished explaining. We'll give you a better overview of our world tomorrow. Kazuki nods. I have many questions, but they can wait until we all have some proper rest. I'm so sorry if we interrupted your day. He bows a little. Midoriya Sr. snorts. Definitely an old type of Japanese. We're a bit more relaxed nowadays. Or at least, I am. There are some people who still cling on to the old rules. Anyway, come on. I want to check up on Mia and get back to bed. Ken zones out a little as they're led through what feels like a mansion, which has a weird mix of magical and modern tech, all the way to a large empty room. This was an experimental room, but now it'll act as your bedroom until we have a better idea of what to do. Luckily we already used it as a storage for our guest supplies, so you'll find plenty of futons in that closet. She points to a classic sliding door. And it's got its own air conditioner in case you prefer a different temp to the rest of the house. She points to a wooden box with a glowing crystal on it. Left knob is for temp, twisting left makes it colder, right makes it hotter. Right knob raises and lowers the fan intensity. Left for lower, right for higher. If you want the guest bathroom, Inko knocks on a wall and it opens. Knock on any of the walls and one will appear. The enchantments can support up to 4 at a time, try for 5 and it just won't respond. What kind of magic dash? Kazuki quickly covers Suzune's mouth before she can start going on a question rant, her eyes sparkling in a way that means she's definitely about to geek over it all. I know it's all very interesting, but please, save it for the morning. I'm sure you're all tired anyhow. Inko says with a patient smile towards Suzune, who nods, jabbing Kazuki when he still doesn't remove his hand. Soon enough, Midoriya Sr. leaves the room, letting them all get set up for bed, the 3 Japanese showing the others how to set up a futon. After a moment, Ken blinks as Blue comes over to him and lays down. Wait. She didn't even blink at having a bear in her house? How weird is this world? Did you see Cement Block Man? Suzune asks rhetorically. Ken opens his mouth to argue, then thinks better of it. Fair. He says instead. Eventually he somehow falls asleep. So many thoughts spinning in his head, yet none seem like words.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.